Chapter 541. After a busy day, when Agatha returned to the castle, the sky was already completely dark. Pushing open the door of her residence, she unexpectedly found Vendi waiting for her in the living room. "Why are you so busy again?" The other side slightly frowned, but there wasn't the slightest hint of blame in her words, only pure concern. "In the future, you should come back earlier, at least have dinner with everyone." "Sorry, I forgot to look at the sky." Agatha took off her coat and hung it at the door of the room. "I was only thinking about making the last batch of nitrogen. I didn't expect that it would already be dark the day after I left, but you have to blame the Lord. When the lights in the chemical plant are on, it's no different from daytime." "I brought you dinner," Vendi sighed helplessly. "It's on the table, it's still hot, hurry up and eat." "Sorry to trouble you," Agatha said, slightly moved. The other side was the most beloved witch of the Witch Cooperation Association, and also deeply trusted by the Lord. If she was in the tequila, she would at least be the executive under the three chiefs. Such a person unexpectedly brought her dinner. In the Union, it was absolutely impossible. "You're welcome," Vendi patted her shoulder. "If you feel tired, remember to ask Echo to sing you a hot spring song. Don't feel embarrassed. Don't forget that you're also a member of the Witch Union." The Witch Union. After closing the door, Agatha was silent for a moment, then went to the table and opened the insulated metal lunch box. There were 3 dishes and 1 soup in the box. They were the fragrant barbecued steak, fried mushrooms, bread slices, and egg soup. To her surprise, there was a small plate in the corner of the box, half filled with honey. She couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. She didn't expect that Vendi would actually notice this. During the decades when the tequila were fighting against the demons, all kinds of resources were getting more and more scarce, including food. Although Agatha's status was not low, she could only eat a variety of grains and fruits grown by the assistant witches. She also had meat, but the supply was not stable. As for spices, sugar, and honey, they were luxuries that only the higher-ups of the Union could enjoy. As for the latter, even if there were witches who could control bee swarms, they would be used on the battlefield instead of being used to make these dispensable sweets. In fact, she was very fond of sweet things, especially honey. During a barbecue banquet, most people would choose a combination of pepper powder and salt as a dressing, but she quietly brushed a jar of honey clean. He didn't expect that Wendy would see this scene. She suddenly felt something coming from the bottom of her heart. Because she could not feel cold, she was not sensitive to warmth. She rarely used hot water when she took a bath because she did not want to bother Anna. Considering her identity and background, she even asked Roland to arrange a separate room for her, as if she lived alone on the top floor of the laboratory tower. But now, she felt that the room was slightly cold. Perhaps, it was not bad to live with others? Agatha took out the honey, spread it evenly on the bread slices, and slowly put it in her mouth. This time, she really felt the warmth brought by the sweetness. After dinner, she planned to read elementary chemistry for a while before going to bed. The knowledge might not help her advance further, but it would prevent her from being embarrassed in front of mortals. Recently, there was a large group of strangers in the chemical factory. According to paper, they were all from King's City Alchemist's workshop. Every day, Agatha could see them wandering between the laboratory and the factory. Sometimes it was Kyle Sichi who led them, and sometimes it was Kyle's disciple Chavez who led them. But no matter when she saw this group of people, they always had an expression of disbelief on their faces. Everyone's mouth was so wide that one could stuff an egg into it, as if this was the only expression they had. Moreover, a few overly curious fellows seemed to think that she was a famous alchemist. Whenever they had the chance, they would come over and ask her a few questions. At first, they were simple questions, but later on, they became difficult to answer. In order to maintain the dignity of a senior witch and the honor of the Quest Society, Agatha decided to maintain this image. But these days of getting along with them, she once again confirmed that the Union's approach was indeed wrong. Roland had proved the wisdom of nobles, and these ordinary mortals also had wisdom no less than witches. It only took them a few days to master the operation of the nitrogen production equipment, and at the same time, to understand the process of extracting nitrogen. At first, they were still arguing about how many elements were in the air, but now they were discussing what synthetic ammonia was. There were even a few white-haired old men who asked Paper questions with smiles on their faces, which scared the hell out of Paper. Obviously, they were learning everything about this place at lightning speed. Thinking of this, Agatha could not help but sigh. Witches were neither the favored children of God, nor were they unfortunate people abandoned by God. They were essentially no different from mortals. It was just an inevitable fate. In this battle of divine will, everyone had to bear the corresponding fate, and witches were only a small group of them. She gradually began to believe that without any part of them, humans would not be able to win this battle of fate. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." Agatha turned around and said, "The door is unlocked." A tall blonde woman pushed the door open and came in. She did not pull up her hood, but Agatha felt that she was always shrouded in shadows. "Nightingale. What's the matter?" "His Majesty wants to see you. If he wants to emphasize the theory of balancing work and rest so that I can come back earlier in the future, I already know. I'll be careful in the future." Agatha curled her lips and said, "I won't waste his precious time." "Really?" Nightingale blinked. To be honest, if they were not enemies, Nightingale seemed to be quite easy to talk to. This is only one of the reasons. His Majesty also said that he wants to attack the demons. Agatha was stunned for a moment. "What?" Then she threw the book in her hand on the table and said, "Take me there." Rushing into the Lord's office, Agatha did not wait for Roland to speak and said anxiously, "You don't even have 10 Longsong cannons now, and you want to attack Devil's Town? Do you think they are as weak as humans? You only need to kill a few thousand of them, and they will abandon their armor and flee. You will destroy this city and the current good situation." "What?" Roland looked very surprised. "What are you talking about? Don't you want to attack the demons?" Chapter 542. Is that all? Hearing this, Agatha was slightly relieved. The strength of the demons lay in their large numbers. 1 or 2 senior witches would be able to deal with a small number of mad demons. Do you have a way to imprison them now? The new witches are perfect for this. Roland explained their abilities. After Iffy captures the demons, the cage can be easily taken away with the balloon. Of course, I'll prepare some handcuffs and shackles, so it won't be a problem to restrain them. What I want to ask is, how long can the red mist last? Can their blood still be used to make sigil after they die? So that's how it is. Agatha now completely understood his purpose. Generally speaking, a can of red mist can last for about a day. The demons will choose the number of red mist canisters to carry according to different tasks. For example, for surveillance and patrol missions, their mounts will carry 3 to 4 canisters, but that's the limit. Why? Roland asked curiously. After leaving the strange Blackrock Tower, the mist will gradually lose its effect, she explained. Otherwise, the Quest Society would have been able to breed demons and beasts of chaos, and synthesize a large number of sigil. It's not that the 3 chiefs of the Union haven't tried this before. For example, they took the initiative to occupy some of the demons' outposts in order to seize the small Blackrock Tower. But the demons always destroyed it before they were defeated, leaving only a withered stone tower for the blessed warriors. Withered? Roland was surprised. Can a stone wither? No one knows what it is, but judging from the stones brought back, it's not an exaggeration to say that it's withered. The originally smooth surface has become rough and dull, and a lot of stone chips will fall off when you touch it. It's completely different from what the warriors saw at first. I see. Roland pondered for a moment. If you can really bring the demons back, can you make a sigil of magic stone? Give me enough experimental materials, a laboratory, and 20 common people as assistants. Agatha counted with her fingers. The success rate of a simple sigil is about 80%, and an advanced one. Well, you don't have the relevant magic stones anyway. That's not a problem. He hesitated and asked in a low voice, but what if the trap operation attracts a group of demons? Agatha couldn't help but laugh. Seeing how confident you were before, I thought you had never worried about this problem. Ahem, I just want to make sure that nothing goes wrong. She said lightly. Just bring me and Miss Anna. You and Anna? You may not have a correct understanding of the witches in your territory, Your Majesty. Agatha sighed. You must know that the Union, whose power covers the entire Fertile Plains, only has more than 100 senior witches. Among them, there are less than 40 who have combat abilities. They constitute the top management of the Union and the backbone of the Blessed Army. In your witch union, there are several senior witches. Coupled with those strange weapons, your strength is comparable to that of a blessed army. It won't be difficult for you to defeat a group of demons. Even if you encounter the Lord of Hell, Miss Anna can activate the Sigil of God's Will twice. I almost forgot about that thing. Roland suddenly realized. Thank you for your suggestion. You're welcome. Defeating demons is my lifelong wish. Don't let me down, Your Majesty. When Agatha was about to leave, Roland stopped her again. By the way, I still have something I don't understand. What is it? Why did you have such a big reaction to the attack on Devilstown? Roland raised his eyebrows. You didn't say that before. I remember that at the beginning, you not only wanted to take the initiative to attack them, but also wanted to seize the possible chaos beasts in the camp at all costs, didn't you? Agatha suddenly felt her cheeks heat up. She didn't need to look to know that it must be a red blush. She couldn't say that at that time. She felt that Roland couldn't stop the demons at all, and was bragging about his strength. That was why she said those words out of spite. Now that she felt that the situation in the territory was good, and that as time passed, the strength of the human beings would become stronger and stronger, her attitude naturally became different. Did I? I don't remember saying that. But at that time you really… Ahem, Your Majesty, I feel very sleepy. She forced a yawn. Please allow me to leave first. Then she left the office without looking back. As she walked through the corridor leading to the witch building, the cool night breeze blew on Agatha's face and gradually calmed her down. Looking at the sky full of stars, Vendi's words suddenly came to her mind. One day, he will become the king of Grey Castle and lead us to defeat any enemy. That's what I believe. At that time, seeing the look of conviction on her face, Agatha felt both envious and a little sad. She envied that they were not overwhelmed by the cruel reality, and she was sad that trust could not make up for the difference in strength. But now she also believed it a little. Ify did not remember how she returned to her bedroom. Her mind was filled with the scene of guns and cannons. Hundreds of people lined up neatly and pulled the trigger at the target in front of them. She could not see anything except the thick white smoke. Even if she could perceive it with her magic power, she would not be able to trap the bullets in time. His Majesty did not lie. The power of the metal bullets was far more powerful than the special bullets Maggie had used in the duel with her. The wooden target that was 100 steps away was riddled with holes, and the witches could only be beaten passively at this distance. As for the other weapon called the artillery, it was even more terrifying. Its attack range was several times that of the guns, and they even needed to use a telescope to observe the results of the shooting. However, the leading guard said that it was just the oldest field artillery, and that a weapon called the 152mm Longsong cannon was the real trump card of the artillery battalion. All kinds of explosions kept ringing in her mind, and finally, all of them converged into one thought. Heidi Morgan lied to us. Ify murmured. Or maybe she didn't expect that there was such a power in the world. Soft Feathers had a complicated look on her face. Apparently, she was also shocked by the military training in the afternoon. What should we do next? Ify did not answer. No matter what purpose Heidi had, it was meaningless now because she knew that the Bloodfang Association could not afford what His Majesty wanted. The many assistant witches under Tilly Wimbledon were obviously much more useful than the combat witches of the Bloodfang Association. Recalling the experience of the past few years, Ify found that the ability and growth that she was so proud of had become a joke. There was nothing worth remembering except Annie. After a long time, she raised her head and said, I don't want to go back to the Bloodfang Association. Soft Feathers nodded imperceptibly. Me too. Then she was stunned. Are you crying? Ify felt a trace of saltiness at the corner of her mouth. She raised her hand to wipe her cheeks, and a wet feeling came from her fingertips. I don't know. She had not tasted tears for a long time. Beasts never cried. Even if they did, they would not cry for her. If only she and Annie had met the witch union from the very beginning. Iffy closed her eyes and let the salty rain fall on her heart. Chapter 543. 2 days later, Roland met Iffy in his office again. Her complexion was a little better than before, and there seemed to be more complicated emotions in her eyes. She looked more lively than before, and she seemed more like a person. Heidi Morgan wants to see you, but it's not convenient for her to come by herself, so she asked Tilly Wimbledon to take us with her. Her opening remarks after saluting surprised Roland a little. Lady Heidi doesn't like Her Highness Tilly. She thinks that combat witches are the core of Sleeping Island, and the Bloodfang Association shouldn't be treated as an ordinary witch organization. Therefore, she hopes to open up the situation with you, and promise that she can give more than what Tilly can give. Of course. I know you don't need these things. Tell me in detail about the Bloodfang Association. Roland supported his chin and said, yes. The story lasted for an hour, and he frowned more and more. At the end of the story he could not help but ask, does Tilly know about these things? I don't know. Iffy shook her head. Lady Heidi forbade us to reveal the past of the Bloodfang Association, and she rarely talked to Her Highness. What about the other witch organizations that joined Sleeping Island? They were closer to the witches of Grey Castle, especially after the establishment of Sleeping Spell. Although some combat witches secretly agreed with Lady Heidi, most of them were unwilling to confront Ashes. It turned out that the pressure on Tilly's shoulders was no less than his own. Roland secretly sighed in his heart. Unlike him, who was the legitimate ruler of the Western region, the witches of Sleeping Island were more like a loose alliance organization. Although Tilly was the convener, she had no authority over the small groups that came to seek refuge. It was also because of this that one could see her outstanding ability, uniting most of the assistant witches and actively establishing connections with the secular rulers of other islands. In particular, the establishment of the sleeping spell gave her an opportunity to manage all the witches. After all, auxiliary witches are equally important, was not just empty talk. The Witches' Bounty Guild just happened to give those auxiliary witches with strange abilities an excellent stage to display their abilities. When they completed tasks and received a large sum of money, and the money was used to improve the quality of life on Sleeping Island, this kind of mindset would gradually form. After all, no matter how powerful a combat witch was, she did not want to live by eating salted fish all day long. When the assistant witch's status was promoted, they would naturally be more inclined towards Tilly. At that time, as the master of the guild, Tilly would undoubtedly have a greater say. This was probably the reason why Heidi Morgan couldn't wait any longer. In addition, the Bloodfang Association itself was also full of doubts. As the daughter of Grand Duke Morgan, how could Heidi not be able to support a group of non-combat witches? It could only be said that from the very beginning, she had never intended to take in those useless people. Her purpose was different from the Witch Cooperation Association. She only wanted a team that could fight for her. Coupled with her obsession with the kingdom of Wolfshart, Roland became even more vigilant. Perhaps it was necessary to write a secret letter to Tilly, so that she could be careful of the Bloodfang Association. Didn't Heidi forbid you from revealing the inside story of the Bloodfang Association? Roland gently knocked on the table and asked, "Are you not going to listen to her anymore?" Iffy bit her lip and said, "I want to join the Witch Union." The knocking suddenly stopped. Roland looked at her a few times in surprise. Although he knew that the demonstration of the force of the hot weapons would give these combat witches who were proud of their powerful abilities a serious blow, he did not expect the effect to be so obvious. "But you hurt Maggie." He thought for a moment and said, "I can't. About this, please punish me." Iffy unbuttoned her robe. Almost at the same time, a pair of hands covered Roland's eyes from behind. However, Nightingale seemed to have forgotten that she was in the state of mist, and her transparent fingers could not block him. She opened her lapel, took off her robe, and turned her back to Roland. Roland could not help but gasp. Iffy's back was covered with all kinds of whip marks. The recovered wounds looked like countless earthworms crisscrossing on her back, which formed a sharp contrast with the delicate skin around it. Probably because the wounds had long healed, Nana's healing ability did not take effect on them, so they remained intact. When Iffy talked about the harsh combat training of the Bloodfang Association, she only used one sentence to cover it up. However, now that he thought about it, Roland could vaguely smell the smell of blood contained in those words. "Put your clothes back on," he said in a low voice. "But your Majesty." Nightingale had already shown herself. She walked forward and pulled her robe back to its original position. "If you want to join the Witch Union, don't use the Bloodfang Association's methods." Roland suddenly felt a little depressed. "You can apply to Vendi. As for whether the others are willing to accept you, it depends on your performance." He paused. "But no matter what, Neverwinter is the home of witches. You can live here for a long time even if you don't join the Union." Hearing the last sentence, Iffy's shoulders visibly loosened. "Thank you for your kindness." After watching Iffy leave, Roland got up and walked to the French window. He let out a long sigh. In this way, the team to capture the demons was complete. However, he did not feel much relaxed at this moment. "Actually, that girl is lucky enough." Nightingale walked to him and said. "Is that really lucky? Compared to her partner Annie, at least she survived. If the Bloodfang Association is really the only witch organization left in the Kingdom of Wolfheart, being caught by the church or the nobles will only lead to a more tragic end. That's why the sisters yearn for the Holy Mountain so much." A doubt suddenly emerged in Roland's mind. Did Heidi Morgan really send those non-combat witches to other witch organizations? In order to avoid exposing their whereabouts, the witches usually keep in touch with each other and change their gathering places frequently. How did Heidi get all this information? After all, the stronghold was a matter of life and death. Leaders would not easily tell others about the organization's activity location unless they trusted someone very much. And even if she knew all this, sending witches to other witch organizations would be very easy to expose. Would other witch organizations accept witches sent by her generously? The more Roland thought about it, the more he found it strange. However, Nightingale had confirmed that Iffy was not lying. So the problem was obviously with the founder of the Bloodfang Association. In this way, Heidi's danger level had increased. Roland realized that he should tell this news to Tilly as soon as possible, so that she could investigate and make early preparations. Chapter 544. Sister, we're here. Cole Kant ran into the cabin excitedly. "I've told you twice not to call me sister during this trip." Edith looked up and glanced at him. "Have you forgotten?" "No." Cole shuddered. "No, I remember." "Then who am I?" My clerk, Lady Edith." "And you?" "Father." "No, the ambassador sent by the Duke of the Northern Region, Car Owen Kant." "Very good. Remember not to make the third mistake." Edith stood up and stretched her stiff limbs. She walked out of the cabin. "Call all the members of the emissary delegation. We're going to the inner city." This was a trick Edith often played. She always liked to observe her negotiation partners behind the scenes and get a preliminary impression of them before she came out to negotiate. Not only could she prepare for a rainy day, but she could also give the other party a fresh feeling. If the target was a man, he would be very interested in her. She never avoided her identity as a woman. Instead, she regarded it as a social advantage. Since she had the title of the Pearl of the Northern Region, she naturally would not waste it. Then, what about the heads? Of course we'll put them on the boat first. Do you want to carry them into the bedroom? She curled her lips. They're already stinky. Walking down the trestle, Edith noticed that there were a lot of boats in the canal, and a lot of people gathered at the dock. Most of them were carrying bags and dressed like neither slaves nor merchants. This made her quite curious. Apart from the two kinds of people, few people would travel far during the spring plowing season. She summoned a servant. "Go and ask them where they're going." "What does it have to do with us?" Cole was puzzled. Since Roland Wimbledon has occupied this city, he'll definitely issue some new policies to declare his authority. This can also reflect his character. Of course, it has something to do with us. Edith smiled. Besides, you can also spend a few golden dragon coins to ask the rats to help you gather information. But I prefer to hear it myself. Is that so? See and think, Ambassador, she said. This is a rare opportunity. After entering the city gate, the number of pedestrians on the street suddenly increased. Simple stalls were set up on both sides of the road, and merchants were shouting their goods. For a moment, the shouts of hawking could be heard one after another. A few years ago, Edith had come to the king's city with her father to attend the 5th princess coming-of-age ceremony. The image of the city in her memory had not changed much. It was still very lively. In the city of Evernight, unless it was a festival or a celebration, there would be no crowd. Suddenly, a speaker on the street attracted her attention. Wait a moment. Edith stopped the procession and led Cole to the side of the crowd. You can saw wood? Can you lay bricks? Can you take care of cows and sheep? As long as he had a skill, he would be a talent that His Majesty needed. Go to the Western region, where His Majesty is building a new capital, Neverwinter. Your talents will bring you generous rewards. Talent? Edith pondered for a moment. That was an interesting way of putting it. But what did the new king's city mean? Neverwinter? Was there such a city in the Western region? Dozens of steps forward, there was another group of people. The witches are innocent. This is the confession written by the high priest before he was executed. Another speaker waved the document in his hand. They may be your relatives, your daughters, your sisters. If you're still afraid of them, send them to Neverwinter. There, they will be taken care of in every possible way. If you don't want to leave them behind, you can go with them. His Majesty has promised that the witch's family will be given a sheltered house and decent jobs. The high priest was executed. Cole widened his eyes. Edith frowned. If this was the new policy of Roland Wimbledon, it was too ostentatious. Was he not afraid of the church's revenge like thunder? It was not a battle between nobles, but a war of heresy. She did not know whether it was a blessing or a curse to be loyal to such a king. It took her an hour to finish walking the street that led straight to the inner city. She found that there were speakers like this everywhere along the way. They made up a book and repeated all the things that His Majesty had done after conquering the capital. Anyone who came to the capital only needed to listen for half a day to understand these changes. They didn't even need to look for a mouse. My lady, I've asked. The servant who was ordered to inquire about the news caught up with the group, panting. They're all going to. You're from Neverwinter, right? Edith interrupted. You. No? Let's not look for an inn. We'll go to the palace to submit the envoy's document. She had a faint bad feeling in her heart. Now hurry up. What did you say? Cole was surprised. His Majesty has been away from King's City for a week? He didn't hold the coronation ceremony? That's what the receptionist said, the servant reported. His Majesty left a chief minister named Bear of Mons to take care of the affairs, but he also left King's City yesterday. Now there is no one living in the palace except for the servants. The receptionist also said that if you want to talk to City Hall, he can pass on the message for you. That's not necessary, Edith said coldly. She did not expect that her premonition would come true. She had been rushing all the way, but in the end, she found nothing. Roland was really planning to move the capital, abandon this great city, and go to the western region to build a new city. What on earth was he thinking about? It was impossible to build a city of this scale without 30 or 40 years of construction. What should we do? Cole asked in a low voice as he looked at the members of the envoy delegation who were in a daze. She looked sullen and said after a while, "Turn around and go back to the dock. We'll also go to Neverwinter. Anyway, they've already left. We don't have to be in such a hurry," Cole said bitterly. "I haven't bathed for a week, and I feel like I'm going to have lice on my body." Edith tilted her head and sniffed her collar. She also smelled a strange smell. She finally sighed and said, "Then let's find a hotel to rest for the night, and set off tomorrow morning." However, when the envoy delegation arrived at the dock the next day, they found that their ship had been burned to the bones. What's going on? For the first time, Edith felt that her brain was not enough to handle the situation. Ahem, don't be angry, sister. Lady Edith, you have to look more and think more. Cole waved his hand to beckon a passerby. Will there be a fire at the dock? Ah, you mean this. the passerby explained enthusiastically. I don't know who the D*MN thief hid the bodies on the ship, and the thief rats smelled the smell. You don't know, but everyone is very sensitive to this thing. After all, half a year ago, the demonic plague broke out in the city, which was caused by the bodies scattered by the church. In short, to deal with this thing, the only safe way is to burn it. The captain has been taken away by the guards for interrogation. Why, do you know him? Edith did not know how to answer for a moment. After a long time, she finally said, "Thank you, I don't know him." Chapter 545. When Roland saw Berav again, he felt as if he was looking at a different person. Not only did he look radiant, but his chest was also puffed up. Every step he took was sonorous and full of confidence. He did not look like an old minister in his 50s at all. It seemed that he had been enjoying his time in King's City. "If I had known this, I would have called you back later," Roland joked. "No, Your Majesty, no matter how prosperous the city of Dawn is, it can't compare to the city of Neverwinter that you built." Berav shook his beard and said, "No matter where I am, my heart will always be with you." Why does this sound so strange? He coughed twice and changed the topic. "How's the situation over there?" "Don't worry. With my apprentices and the First Army, the new nobles can't do anything even if they want to make trouble," the director said proudly. "I've also deliberately given them more space to fight for power, as long as they don't interfere with the normal operation of the people in the City of Dawn. It's estimated that for a long time in the future, they'll be fighting for power. After all, before this, they don't even have the right to enter the city hall." "That's a good idea." Roland smiled. He also knew a thing or two about the checks and balances in politics. However, knowing was one thing. When it came to implementing it, it was obviously not better than these old foxes who had been in politics for a long time. Even if they were not the most cunning foxes, they were thick-skinned and vicious enough. It could be said that it was not until now that Berav had displayed his full talent. As the king of a country, Roland did not need to get involved in dirty political tricks. As long as he had the power of personnel, law and military in his hands, no one would dare to covet his power. "Your Majesty, may I ask, where did you send Minister of Finance Lauren Moore?" Berav sighed. "The ceremonial officer in the palace said that you didn't execute him. He embezzled the relief rations allocated to the people, colluded with the former prime minister, and had a part in the forced conscription of refugees." Roland shrugged. "It's not a crime worthy of death. He's old and not suitable to be sent to the mines, so I just banished him." "That's really a pity." "What, you want to use him?" "Of course not. Lauren is quite influential in the King's City. I'm not sure that those small nobles can suppress him." Berav smiled and shook his head. "It's just that as my mentor, he has suppressed me for so long. It's a pity that I can't see his surprised, regretful, and begging for mercy." Roland could not help but laugh out loud. "I think he will bring his family to the Kingdom of Dawn. Maybe you will have a chance to meet him in the future. Let's not talk about this. I called you back because I want to build a few new factories. They're related to the next series of major renovations in Neverwinter." "Do you need a lot of people?" "That's right. Otherwise, I could just order car." He nodded. "We need at least 3,000 people." Berav smiled bitterly. "You're the only one who would make such a request. It's impossible for any other city to have an industry that employs 3,000 people at once. The good news is that these 3,000 people don't need to all be literate. As long as more than 200 of them have completed elementary education, it will suffice." "What do you want to build?" Roland spread out the notebook that he had prepared in advance in front of him. "A coke plant, a steel mill, and a forge." "Is the steel produced by Miss Anna not enough?" Berav asked. "It's not that it's not enough, but it's too wasteful." Roland sighed. "Her magic power should be invested in more advanced manufacturing, not consumed on the materials for the steam engine. I plan to realize the witchization of basic industrial products this year." The industry in Neverwinter was now at an inflection point. If they did not seek a breakthrough, it could be said that it would be difficult for them to make any progress. The reason was that the source power machinery still could not do without the support of Anna's materials, so the scale could not be further expanded. In fact, the steam engine did not need such good steel at all. The town's first engine was made of cast iron. Now that the preconditions for the breakthrough had been met, the coal mine could be used to make coke, which was the main material for large-scale steelmaking. The 10 earthen blast furnaces in the furnace area could also supply a sufficient amount of pig iron ingots. A simple converter was used to smelt steel, and the steam hammer in the forge was used to forge components that could be directly processed by other factories. If this set of processes could be recycled, Anna could be completely liberated, and the production process could be realized with the participation of ordinary people. After Roland roughly explained the main work of the 3 projects, Berov quickly understood the meaning of witchization. "I understand, but Your Majesty, can these really be achieved?" he asked doubtfully. "Without the power of demons, witches, can we obtain steel so easily? Perhaps you don't know, but in other cities, it's not uncommon for a piece of forged steel to be 20 times more expensive than pig iron. In this era, steel was made by blacksmiths hammer by hammer. By repeatedly hammering pig iron ingots, the excess carbon and impurities in the iron would be oxidized by the air, thus forming steel. Of course, this process was extremely inefficient, and a lot of raw materials would be wasted. A lot of iron would fall off due to oxidation, resulting in several iron ingots being used to produce only one usable piece of steel. Therefore, a set of steel full-body armor was the lifelong pursuit of most knights, and it could be passed down from generation to generation as a family heirloom. From a certain point of view, the method of forging steel gave people the illusion that concentration was the essence. In most people's eyes, the fact that Neverwinter could produce large amounts of steel in large quantities was the credit of witches, so it was not difficult to understand Berov's doubt. But for Roland, steel was just iron with a different carbon content. Of course it's not easy. Whether it's coking or converter steelmaking, they're both technologies that need to be explored repeatedly, but... Roland paused. These projects will definitely be realized. By that time, there will be hundreds of chimneys in the industrial area, and the steel output in a month will exceed the current annual output. We will have an inexhaustible supply of steel. Bicycles, ships, all kinds of machines, even houses, everything you see will be made of steel. It will enter everyone's home, and even ordinary people will be able to use steel utensils and tools. Berov was stunned for a long time before he replied, "I'll draw up a recruitment plan and financial allocation for your review as soon as possible." "Well, I'll leave the preparatory work to you," Roland encouraged him. When he walked to the door of the office, he suddenly turned around and saluted again with his hand on his chest. "It'll be my honor to see such a world, Your Majesty." Chapter 546. Yearning for a New World. Roland could not help but laugh. Then he asked Nightingale to summon Anna. At times like this, Anna would automatically leave and give the two of them some time alone. Today, Anna was wearing a light blue dress with knee-length black stockings and a pair of moccasins. She looked very energetic. These modern-style clothes were made under Roland's instruction in his spare time. The fabric was coated by Soroya. Not only was it light, but it was also very durable. It was very suitable for her to use when she was working with tools. Whenever he saw her watery eyes, Roland could not help but smile. Of course, he did not need to be as honest as he used to be. He pulled Anna onto his lap and sniffed the fragrance of her hair. Roland first kissed her affectionately before he got down to business. "I want to develop a new source of power, like a steam engine." She turned her head. Along her fair neck, Roland could see her protruding collarbone. Roland could not help but reach out and touch it, which made Anna let out a low chuckle. "Your Majesty, let's get down to business." Okay." He put Anna down and took out a stack of blueprints from the documents on the table. "Take a look at this first. How much do you understand?" As soon as Anna got into her learning mode, she would be completely immersed in it. Just looking at her attentively studying made Roland feel inexplicably ashamed. It was as if he was sitting in a brightly lit classroom, peeking at his deskmate who was writing at a very fast speed. In order to balance this mentality, he decided that he must make Anna beg for mercy at night. "I think I understand." Anna finished flipping through the last drawing and nodded after thinking for a moment. It's also driven by steam, but the piston has been replaced with windmill blades, which eliminates the reciprocating motion of the connecting rod. Am I right? That's right. Roland stopped thinking and put on a serious face. It's called a steam turbine. It still uses high-pressure steam to move, but its efficiency is much higher than a reciprocating steam engine. This was the revolutionary product that Roland had been thinking about for a long time. It could be said that this was the original intention of freeing the basic industries from the witch's restrictions. In this way, Anna could concentrate on the production of more advanced machinery. The steam turbine was his attempt in this field. The steam turbine had a wide range of uses. It could be used as ship power and thermal power, especially the latter. It was foreseeable that after Fallen Dragon Ridge was reclaimed, Countess Spear would have to stay in her town for a long time to deal with government affairs. It would be difficult for Mystery Moon to maintain the nighttime lighting in the factory area with her magic power alone, let alone the electrification project in the residential area. Of course, Roland was unwilling to admit that it was his inexperience that led to the failure of the plan. To make up for this mistake, he could only use conventional means to generate electricity. Due to the inherent defects in the circulation principle of the steam engine, the electric current generated by the steam engine was sometimes high and sometimes low. Roland did not have the knowledge to stabilize the electric circuit, so it was more appropriate to use the steam turbine, which had a more stable output power and higher thermal efficiency. What should I do first? Anna asked. Just like the gunboat last time. Roland turned to the page with the blade drawn. Create a working verification model. It doesn't need to be too big, about 1 meter will do. The main problem is to solve the angle of the blade so that high-pressure steam can smoothly pass through each stator grill. As long as you can do this, you'll be halfway to success. How could he create a usable product without detailed data? He could only try again and again. As for the core part of the steam turbine, the impeller, Roland was not worried at all about the difficulties in processing it. The cutting precision of the Blackfire was far better than that of the finishing machines of the modern era. He also did not have to worry about the strength of the material. After all, the impeller worked at a temperature between 500 and 600 degrees. And the alloy steel Wuxia had discovered was more than enough to handle the intensity of the work. The key was the angle coordination between the stator and the moving impeller. The former was like a fixed fence that adjusted the angle of the steam passing through, so that it would not swarm into the impeller and create a disordered or even opposite force. In essence, it was like a comb that combed the chaotic airflow. If the model could operate normally, it would not be difficult to scale up the production. When the processing methods and the level of materials were improved, it was inevitable that it would bear a rich industrial fruit. I see. Anna's eyes flashed with eagerness. Don't rush. Roland held her hand. You should have heard from Vendi that I've decided to take the initiative to capture the demons. Yes. Anna blinked. Will you go with us this time? Roland shook his head slowly. That's good. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I was scared to death when I saw you get hurt last time. Really? But I heard from Nightingale that you were the calmest one at the scene. If it wasn't for your decisive action, I might have really. Before he could finish his words, Anna covered his mouth with her soft hand. Don't say that word. I know. She did not release her hand until Roland nodded. Anyway, what I want to say is you must protect yourself, understand? If there's an accident, immediately use the sigil of God's punishment. Don't hesitate, even if you don't catch the demons. I'll wait for you in the castle. Don't worry. Anna smiled. I won't let them hurt the other witches. After she left, Roland was silent for a long time before he said in a low voice, Are you there? Of course. Nightingale's figure appeared on the desk. But I didn't eavesdrop on what you said. I only came back after she left. He stood up and walked to the window. Looking in the direction of the snow-capped mountain, he roughly described the hunting plan he had in mind. Before you set off, you have to rehearse a few times in advance to familiarize yourself with the whole hunting process and the tasks you'll be responsible for. But this plan is only designed to deal with a small number of demons. As for the specific plan, It'll have to be adjusted according to the actual situation. At this point he paused. If the arrest operation encounters the worst situation, I mean the irreversible situation, you must bring Anna back no matter what. Nightingale did not answer immediately. When Roland turned to look at her, she said with a complicated expression, "Is this the real reason why you don't go?" Roland did not deny it. "Otherwise you'll definitely choose to save me, right?" "I understand." She sighed softly. "I'll do my best." Chapter 547. North of the border city wall of Neverwinter. Iffy arrived at the previous ability test site and found that many witches had gathered on the grassland, including Maggie and the blonde girl who was always by her side. Iffy remembered that her name was Lightning. Seeing her, that guy even fiercely waved his fist, made a face and pulled Maggie far away from him. If it were 3 days ago, Iffy would have taught the two of them a lesson and let them know that they should respect combat witches. But now, she just smiled silently. Looking at the alert look of the blonde girl, she unconsciously thought of Annie. At that time, Annie was just like her, always cautious and alert, always protecting Iffy behind her. Obviously, the two of them were just refugees who happened to travel together. Perhaps this was the so-called sisters in the alliance. Since everyone is here, I'll explain the next task. This operation is codenamed Melting Point and will be commanded by Ms. Agatha. His Majesty walked to the center of the crowd. Of course, many of you already know the content of the task, but for the sake of the newcomers, I'll explain it from the beginning. Newcomers. Does he mean me? Iffy immediately gathered her spirit. No matter what, this was the first task given by her new master. Since he assigned her to participate, it must be related to the battle. This was a good opportunity for her to show her ability and value. In order to understand the enemy's ability and promote the research of the Sigil of Magic Stone, you'll go to Devil's Town behind the Snow Mountain, lure the demons to attack, and then capture them alive with an ambush. After Roland Wimbledon finished, Iffy was still in a daze for a long time. Was there something wrong with her ears? God, was he serious? An enemy called the Demons destroyed the witch empire that once ruled the continent? And this blue-haired woman who was the commander of the operation was a senior witch from more than 400 years ago? The outcome of the Battle of Divine Will would determine the fate of mankind? And these ferocious enemies were hiding in a place not far from the western region? How could this be possible? But when she glanced at the other witches with a stiff face, she found that they did not show any surprise on their faces. Obviously, they had already known the news. Next, Agatha will explain the things that we need to pay attention to during the melting point operation, as well as the tactical arrangements. Agatha nodded and stepped forward. According to the current intelligence, there is a vigilant eye demon in the camp. This is also the key to the luring plan. As long as someone sees it, it will see them at the same time. If it's a long distance away, the flying devil beasts are usually the first to move. There aren't many of them, and it's impossible for them to appear in such a large scale in such a remote place. If there were 2 last time, it should be the same number this time. Fighting in the air is disadvantageous to us, so the best way is to pull them to the ground. That way, I can handle 2 devil beasts by myself. The mad demons are Miss Iffy's targets. She looked at Iffy and said, "Use your ability to imprison the enemy, and the mission will be a success." No matter how he looked at it, she was only a little older than him, but her lifespan was more than 400 years? Iffy was stunned for a while, and then she answered confusedly, I understand. You've never seen a demon, so it's normal for you to doubt it." Agatha seemed to see through her thoughts. Vendi still has a record of the encounters between the Witch Cooperation Association and the demons. You can take a look after it after the drill, so that you won't be too scared to move when you see the real enemy. Iffy could not help but frown at these words. Too scared to move. Even if the demon came from hell, it could only howl in its own cage. What should we do to pull them down? Lightning asked. Abandon the floating balloon and enter the misty forest. Agatha squatted down and laid out a map with a stone. When Sylvie sees the pursuers, you and Maggie immediately take the people on the balloon away. I've confirmed this with His Majesty. If it's a hydrogen balloon, only Vendi can operate it. Together with Sylvie, they can escape at the same time. When the devil beasts get close to the balloon, you'll be responsible for luring them into the forest. If their line of sight is blocked, they'll definitely come down to search for them. Pay attention to the enemy's spear attacks. I believe you can easily avoid them. Well, it sounds exciting. Lightning grinned. Leave it to me. The forest is Leaf's territory. As soon as the demons enter the ambush area, they'll definitely be unable to move an inch. I don't need to tell you what to do next. What if there are more than 2 devil beasts? A witch with emerald green hair asked. If there are many of them, the demons are likely to act separately. For example, some of them will stay in the air to patrol, while others will enter the forest. Agatha paused. If that's the case, Anna will deal with the enemies in the air. But remember, the killing range of the Sigil of Gods is limited. It's best to activate the sigil when the devil beasts gather. In addition, you can't use your own ability while activating the sigil. So Leaf, you have to protect Anna. What about me? Nightingale asked. You take Iffy with you. Her ability only works within 10 steps. It's very risky for her to be exposed to the demon's spear attacks. We'll use the mist to shorten this distance. All right. Nightingale turned her head and glanced at Iffy. Iffy immediately felt Nightingale's magic power, which was sharp and cold. Don't drag me down, Nightingale said, glancing at Iffy. Iffy realized that Iffy was also a combat witch. She had experienced bloody battles, and her hands were stained with blood. Now let's practice. Agatha clapped her hands and said, Let's start with luring the demons. An hour later, Iffy had a general understanding of the abilities of the witches participating in this operation. What surprised her was that many of them could be called combat witches. For example, Leaf, who had wrapped herself in the trunk of a tree, could control the entire forest for her own use. This kind of ability was simply incredible. The range of coverage was completely beyond the limits of ordinary witches. Although Wendy was only responsible for controlling the balloon, the small-scale hurricanes she summoned could easily turn stones and mud into arrows that could hurt people. Agatha's ice was both a strong shield and a sharp blade. It could be said to be both offensive and defensive in close combat. Nightingale was even more terrifying. As long as she escaped into the mist, she could travel through the whole world as if there were no obstacles in the real world. Iffy, who had personally experienced this, could totally imagine the scene of this kind of ability being invincible in a real battle. A traceless and unpredictable Grim Reaper was enough to make all the enemies feel hopeless. However, Anna was the one who piqued Iffy's curiosity the most. According to the combat mission, this girl who seemed to have just reached adulthood was the team's trump card. How powerful must she be to be able to destroy so many demons in one breath? Chapter 548. Anna's turn was completely separated from the others. It was not until everyone was familiar with the whole hunting process that it was her turn to practice the Sigil of God's Will. Although Iffy had no idea what kind of ability the Sigil of God's Will was, all the witches present seemed to be in high spirits, and seemed to be very interested in the next practice. Could it be that they rarely saw Anna in action? Iffy became more and more curious. Iffy saw Anna slowly walking to the center of the meadow, holding a strange metal piece in her hand. She did not look like a combat witch. Her calm eyes were as clear as a lake, and from her gestures, one could tell that she had never fought with life and death. The metal piece also puzzled Iffy. It was flat in front and back, only the size of a palm, and was inlaid with shining gems. It did not look like a weapon at all. Release the balloons. Agatha waved her hand in the direction of the misty forest. After a while, several colorful balls jumped out of the canopy and rose into the sky. Go. Shoot them down, she shouted. Wait. It's too far away. Iffy thought in surprise. The grassland was half a mile away from the edge of the forest. If Anna could not fly, how could she encounter these things that kept rising? Could she also surpass the limit of her ability and project the effect of magic power into the sky above the forest? Anna nodded, raised the metal piece in her hand, and pointed it in the direction of the balloons. Then Iffy saw an incredible scene. The 4 gems emitted a dazzling light at the same time, and the metal piece instantly turned golden. Thunder rumbled in the clear sky, and light rays scattered down from the clouds, as if a new sun was condensing in the sky. Her ability can actually trigger a celestial phenomenon. Before Iffy could scream, a dazzling golden light burst out from Anna's hand and pounced on the balloons. The streamers in the sky were also triggered. For a moment, it was as if countless thunder struck down, violently sweeping the target along the track of the golden light, as if it was a divine punishment from God. The deafening roar exploded in Iffy's ears, causing her brain to buzz. She did not fully recover until the light disappeared. What kind of astonishing ability was this? Iffy's body trembled uncontrollably as she stared at the empty sky above the woods. She was afraid that even if all the combat witches of the Bloodfang Association joined forces, they would not be able to withstand this attack. Did she rely on her own ability, or did she rely on that piece of metal to do this? In the face of such power, the power of beasts that Heidi Morgan promoted was no different from the sheep that she spoke of. Iffy suddenly remembered His Majesty's introduction. Is this the power of a senior witch? It was also Roland's first time witnessing the entire process of the sigil of God's will. After the light shot out, it seemed to leave an invisible road sign on the path, and the golden thunder that followed closely behind all landed on this road sign. The place where the first lightning fell was at the edge of the forest. Apparently, it was controlled by the person who activated the sigil, and would only disperse when it approached the enemy. In addition, the light was not constant. When it was shot out from the sigil, it was only as thick as an arm, but it would soon expand and eventually become a fan. The final range of the light would be about 50 meters. In the era of cold weapons, this could be regarded as a great killing weapon that could destroy the world. Those electric lights, are they all made of magic power? He looked at Nightingale. I think. Probably, the latter said hesitantly. Probably. In the mist, I can indeed see the magic power surging crazily, but... She looked confused. It's not the same color as any magic power I've seen before. What color is it? Black, or should I say, the color of no light? Nightingale frowned and said, it's like a hole formed by the god's stone of retaliation. Roland was startled. The power of the golden sigil was actually a lightless black in the misty world? In other words, the characteristics of their magic power were the same, or at least similar. He suddenly realized something. He thought of the relationship between the god's stone and the magic stone, and a bold guess came to mind. After returning to the castle office, he called Agatha over. How much research have you conducted on the sigil of God's will? Not much. I've already told you all the relevant conclusions. After all, only the chief can activate this kind of sigil, and their magic power is the key to deciding the outcome of the battle. Naturally, they won't squander it on testing, she said curiously. What's wrong? Did you notice something wrong? I remember you said that it can penetrate the defense of the god's stone of retaliation, right? Agatha nodded. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It should be related to the quality of the god's stone. Haven't you observed the magic power characteristics of the sigil of God's will? Roland said in a low voice. In the mist, the magic power thunder triggered by the sigil has the same luster as the god's stone. No. Of course we have done that. Recording the characteristics of magic power is a must, but when the sigil is released, the stone of measuring used for monitoring will lose its effect. The first seat can't visit the Quest Society every day, so this item is recorded as golden during visual inspection. She blinked. Wait a minute, you said it has the same luster as the interference field of the god's stone? That's right, Roland said slowly. I have a conjecture. The god's stone of retaliation is not a hole that forbids magic power. Instead, it contains an extremely strong magic power, so strong that it affects the operation of the magic power around it, causing it to lose its effect. This is also the reason why the sigil of gods will causes the stone of measuring to lose its effect. Within its range, it forms the same interference field as the god's stone of retaliation. Naturally, the magic stone will lose its effect. But the trainee in charge of magic power observation clearly said, Agatha suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Her observation was blocked by the strong light of the sigil of God's will. Like a shadow covered by light, Roland said bluntly. In Nightingale's misty world, only magic power has color. Even if you look directly at the sun, you won't be affected. This is why you didn't notice it. Magic power observation was a branch of the witch's ability, but it was limited by the witch's own vision. Observation during the day and night would result in different conclusions. Sylvie could fully prove this point. With the eye of magic, she could detect magic fluctuations several kilometers away. In terms of detection range, it was far greater than Nightingale. Chapter 549. Agatha looked a little excited as she paced back and forth in front of the mahogany table. So according to you, the sigil of gods can penetrate the god's stone of retaliation because its magic power is stronger? And when the chaos beasts modify the god's stone, they are essentially reducing its magic power and turning it into a specific magic stone. That's what I think. No, that's not right. She suddenly stopped walking. If the lightless hole is really caused by the high magic power, then why didn't this happen to the witches? Witches? Roland was stunned. Anna. Agatha pondered. The magic power in her body can activate the sigil of God's will twice. Logically, it should be stronger than the God's stone of retaliation, but Blackfire can't penetrate the interference of the God's stone. And there is no anti-magic field around her. This doesn't make sense. He was speechless for a moment. This problem was indeed unexplainable. Even the worst quality God's stone of retaliation could easily interrupt the witch's ability, and the powerful Blackfire of Anna was no exception. Moreover, in the misty world, Anna's magic power was like a solid metal cube. No matter how he looked at it, it was very different from an empty black hole. One more question. Why does the magic stone need to be filled with magic power to be effective? Agatha continued. Even if the magic power of the stone has been reduced, it should still contain a large amount of magic power. But in fact, ordinary people can't operate them at all. And the magic stone can't be used as a source of magic power by the witch's special transfer ability. This has been verified by the Quest Society. She paused. My mentor thinks that only life can contain magic power, and that the lifeless matter will be ruthlessly abandoned by magic power. Witches and the demon's blood are proof. Most researchers agree with this view, although I don't mind overturning this conclusion. Before the magic stone is injected with magic power or formed into a sigil, it is not much different from an ordinary gem. Roland fell silent. It seemed that the assumption about the strength of magic power was not appropriate. However, the magic thunder that looked like black light was too similar to the god's stone. There should be some connection between them. What did he overlook? Unfortunately, there were no reliable means of observation and analysis in this era. The perception and recording of magic power could only be done with the help of the witch's ability, or the stone of measuring. The characteristics of magic power could only be obtained in the most general form, making it difficult to conduct further research. After pondering for a long time without any results, he could only put this matter aside, and hope that he would be able to find the answer in the talisman crafting in the future. 3 days later, the melting point operation had completed a series of preparations. Roland personally saw off the personnel at the dock. This was the first large-scale mixed military operation with witches as the protagonists. There were 2 ships in total, carrying the most elite veterans of the First Army, led by Brian. They had followed Roland to the city wall and fought against demonic beasts, so they had the highest respect and trust for the Lord. During the screening, they were repeatedly warned that they might face an extremely ferocious alien, which was even more powerful than demonic hybrids, and that those who did not want to participate in the mission could say so. In the end, no one flinched, and their answers were all approved by Nightingale. Even so, it was still a last resort to let these 100 people face the enemy. Although their willpower was reliable, Roland did not dare to overestimate the people of this era, who were afraid of the gods and demons from the bottom of their hearts. He had experienced various kinds of movies and television shows, so he would not be surprised to see even the most ferocious and terrible monsters. However, for these ordinary people, it would probably be an indelible nightmare. Therefore, the carefully selected soldiers would set up a defense along the river 2 or 3 kilometers away from the operation site, and would not directly participate in the hunting. They would only take on the task of intercepting the witches if an accident happened, and they had to retreat. The members of the witch team were Anna, Nightingale, Vendi, Leaf, Agatha, Sylvie, Iffy, Lightning, and Maggie. It could be said to be the most powerful team in Neverwinter at present. According to Agatha, even the Lord of Hell would not be able to escape alive. Protect yourselves. Safety is the most important thing, Roland said solemnly. It doesn't matter if you can't complete the mission. I'll wait for you in the castle. Anna stepped forward and hugged him. Don't worry, I'm here. And me, your majesty. Coo. The little girl and the pigeon also hugged him. In the end, except for Agatha and Iffy, everyone hugged Roland. The former made a disdainful nasal sound and muttered in a low voice. It's just a simple hunting mission. It's not a life-and-death separation. If the tequila dilly-dally like this every time they go to battle, the demons would have long built an outpost at the city gate. The latter was extremely shocked. It was the first time that she had heard such a casual order. It doesn't matter if you can't complete the mission, as long as you come back safely? His Majesty's requirements for the witches are too relaxed. Isn't this encouraging them to shrink back? In the Bloodfang Association, every time she attacked, she was determined to fight to the death. In the past few years, several combat witches had died in the hands of their enemies. After all, those who could not complete the tasks given by their masters would be severely punished, and even regarded as worthless trash by everyone. However, from Roland Wimbledon's mouth, she heard a completely different view. Neither a beast nor a lamb. Is this the choice of a human ? The paddle steamer sounded its whistle and smoke billowed from its chimney. The ship slowly left the dock and headed for the middle of the river. Suddenly, Roland felt a pair of invisible hands holding his face. It was cold and soft. Remember to protect yourself when I'm not here. Don't leave the castle. A familiar whisper sounded in his ears. I'll be back soon. Then he felt a gentle touch on his lips. It was a little sweet and moist, which was completely opposite to the feeling on his face. It was warm. This touch came and went as quickly as it came, as if it was just an illusion. Roland came to his senses and stretched out his hand to feel forward. There was nothing around him. The steamer was much slower than the balloon. It took them nearly 2 days to reach the end of the Redwater River. Looking at the magnificent snow-capped mountain towering into the clouds, they could not help but be attracted by the magnificent scene in front of them. The snow on the mountain melted much slower than in the forest. The accumulated snow for several months poured down from the peak, and was divided into several thin streams by the protruding rocks. When looked at from afar, they were like numerous silver threads that were thin and fragile. But when one came closer, one would notice that every single silver thread was wide like the surface of a river. And when they descended into the lake at the foot of the mountain, they actually emitted a deep rumble that was like muffled thunder. Obviously, the Redwater River was only one of the outlets of this lake. Otherwise, such a surging water would have caused the river to surge and flood. After a night's rest, the hydrogen balloon was quickly inflated and lifted off. The fleet also retreated 3 kilometers according to the plan, and built a line of defense along the river. Chapter 550. The Farsight carried Vendi and Sylvie to the swirling sea. Lightning and Maggie accompanied them on both sides of the basket, waiting to pick them up at any time. This time, their mission was not to investigate Devil's Town, so they did not need to fly so high. As long as they avoided the snow mountain, Sylvie could see through the rocky cliffs and directly see the eye demon on the top of the Blackstone spire. According to Agatha, the eye demon did not really need to see its enemies. As long as someone noticed it, it could sense its existence and locate its location. This kind of demon had caused great casualties to the Blessed Army's raiding team. It was difficult to avoid its detection, whether it was invisible or descending from the sky. It could not be detected unless they fought blindfolded. Of course, they could not see it. However, the eye demon usually stayed at the highest point of the camp, so it was difficult not to notice it. How is it? Did you see anything? Lightning flew over and asked. I have to get closer, or else I won't be able to hold on for long. Sylvie rubbed her eyes. Using the eye of magic to see through obstacles consumed a lot of energy, and the range of observation would also be shortened. She had carefully focused her vision into a straight line, but when the details of the cliff's cross-section were revealed one by one, she still felt dizzy. I got it. Vendi summoned a gust of wind. Hold on tight. The rocky beach gradually became clearer, and the thin red mist appeared in front of them. Even though it was a clear sky, the mist still pressed down on the cliffs, but its color was much fainter than the last time they saw it. Sylvie looked again. The soil in her field of vision was finally replaced by the viscous mist. Tower-like buildings were faintly discernible in the red mist, as if it was an abandoned world. She soon found the thickest spire made of black stone. Compared to the last time, she did it on purpose this time. She wanted to alarm the demons and lure them to chase her. Unlike Lightning, who was always energetic, Sylvie did not want to be an explorer. She just wanted to live an ordinary life. However, the Battle of Divine Will was an inescapable fate. Even if she did not like twists and turns, she could not stay out of it. Just as she promised Tilly to go to Border Town to see if Roland was controlled by witches, she only hesitated for a moment when Roland announced the plan. Previously, she did it for all the sisters on Sleeping Island. This time, she did it for the Witch Union and the whole kingdom of His Majesty. Sylvie took a deep breath and looked up. In an instant, hundreds of eyeballs appeared in her field of vision. The black, soft-bodied monster was still lying in the same place, as if it had never moved. Even its limbs were fused with the top of the tower, as if it had grown out of the stone. The numerous eyeballs shifted their direction at the same time, and Sylvie could even see her own reflection in the dark eyeballs. This feeling made her hair stand on end. She felt a chill down her spine. They're coming. She interrupted her ability and shouted, "Let's go." Ow. In the blink of an eye, Maggie transformed into a gigantic devil beast, and with a roll, she steadily stopped below the basket. Sylvie jumped down and landed on her spacious back, while Lightning carried Windy on her back and followed closely behind. Together, they flew towards the concealing forest. Compared to the last time, they were completely prepared this time. The empty hydrogen balloon would be an eye-catching sign to guide the two sides to meet. According to the plan, Lightning would return to this place alone and lure the demons to go deeper. Taking advantage of this, Sylvie turned her head and looked back. There were 5 black spots on the cliff. This number was more than Agatha had predicted, but it did not exceed the warning red line. However, under the observation of the Eye of Magic, she found something wrong. Among the 5 demons, only 4 were driving devil beasts, and 2 of them were obviously very different from mad demons. They did not have burly bodies and thick arms, and they were not wearing a patchwork of animal skin and iron armor. Instead, they were wearing colorful robes, which reflected a rainbow-like luster under the sun. Sylvie could not tell what the robes were made of. The robes kept surging under them, as if there were countless vipers hiding under them. Their heads were also bigger than the mad demons, but they had no obvious facial features. Their faces looked like huge scars with red wrinkles spreading from the middle. It was as weird as it could be. When she looked at the last demon, she was stunned for a moment. The demon was wearing heavy and exquisite armor, and carrying a 2-handed giant sword on its back. It looked extremely heavy, but it was flying like lightning behind the 4 devil beasts without slowing down. Its face was also completely covered by a helmet. It was not a skull helmet like the one worn by the mad demons, but more like a metal one. Both sides of the helmet were engraved with exquisite patterns, and several sharp horns protruded from the top. At first glance, it looked like a miniature blackstone tower. The parts that should have been the eyes were flashing with red light, looking evil and ferocious. What kind of demon is this? Sylvie was shocked. Agatha did not mention how to deal with this situation. Should she still carry out the arrest according to the original plan? A strong sense of uneasiness enveloped her. The 2 of them landed in the depths of the forest one after another. As soon as she climbed down from Maggie's back, she saw a golden figure soaring into the sky and flying toward the balloon at a speed several times faster than when it came. It was too late to stop it. After hesitating for a while, Sylvie felt that she had to tell Agatha about this. She patted Maggie's wings and said, Take me to the ambush area. What's wrong? Vendi trotted over. Aren't we going to meet up with the First Army? According to the training, the two of them were not very helpful in restraining the demons. In order to reduce unnecessary risks, they should leave the main battlefield as soon as possible and approach the First Army's defense line. I saw a strange demon. Sylvie shook her head. The enemy is not just the mad demons. I have to inform everyone. But the ambush area is very big. Maggie crouched down. Even if you go there, you may not be able to find them immediately. It doesn't matter. Just take me there. She climbed back onto the back of the giant beast and turned to look at Vendi. You go to the river alone. I'll be back soon. Lightning increased her speed to the maximum. The wind whistled past her ears, and the land under her rapidly shrank. The forest, river, and beach became a mass of blurred color blocks and twisted lines in the blink of an eye. She had to rush back to the area where the hydrogen balloon was before the demons, and pretend to flee in panic to lure the demons to pursue her. Chapter 551. Lightning rushed to the bottom of the balloon, found the explosives fixed on the balloon, and pulled out the delay fuse. Seeing the white smoke rising from the mouth of the explosives, she immediately fell to the sea. This was a simple self-destruct device. Once the enemy found the balloon, the baiter would have to destroy Farsight, lest the demons become interested in it, or abandon the witches to concentrate on this novel gadget, which would be awkward. As soon as Lightning fell to the sea, she heard a loud noise. In an instant, the sky seemed to brighten. Raising his head, he saw that the air sac had expanded into a huge red fireball. The center of the fireball was a bright orange color, surrounded by dark red smoke. The flames lasted for several breaths before gradually fading away, like a fallen sun. She even saw a demon that was too close to the fireball was overturned by the rolling flames. Its whole body ignited, and it fell into the sea together with its mount. For other black shadows sprang out from the smoke and rushed toward her. So far, everything was going according to plan. So the demons were just SOSO. Lightning smiled and flew toward the forest, staying close to the sea. Next, she would bring them into the depths of the dense forest controlled by Leaf. The hunting ground had been set up, and they were quietly waiting for the prey to take the bait. The dense branches, vines, and sawgrass were bound to be a nightmare for the enemies. If they could dream. Sylvie opened the Eye of Magic and searched the ambush area. The forest controlled by Leaf glowed green. From the sky, it looked like a long-necked bottle embedded in the ground, with the mouth facing the swirling sea and the body several miles away. She resisted the dizziness and scanned the inside of each tree trunk. A large number of detailed images poured into her mind, making her head ache. As she approached the mouth of the bottle, Sylvie finally found Agatha hiding in a big tree. Why are you here? As soon as Maggie landed, a gap opened in the tree trunk, and Agatha poked her head out. The baiting plan didn't work? No, 5 demons came after us. She jumped off the back of the beast, picked up the white-haired little girl, and anxiously crawled into the tree. But 3 of them are different. How is it different? Sylvie told Agatha about the strange demon she had seen in detail, and then she saw Agatha's shocked expression. Her heart sank. Are they difficult to deal with? It took her a long time to regain her composure. With an ugly expression, she said, "Those demons in robes are fearsome demons. They are terrifying killers to mortals, but witches are not afraid of them. You just have to avoid looking into their eyes. The real eyes of the fearsome demons are hidden under the fiery scars on their faces. So they are fearsome demons," Sylvie mumbled. In the stories of the ancient witches, these demons could directly shock the hearts of the enemy, causing fear, timidity, confusion, and despair. Often, 3 or 4 of them could defeat a troop of about 100 common people. Many people were so frightened that they did not even have the thought of resisting, kneeling on the ground while trembling, waiting to be slaughtered. Although the god's stone of retaliation could greatly weaken this effect, it couldn't completely eliminate it. Moreover, the enemy seemed to be born with the ability to affect the mind. When it was used, there was no obvious magic fluctuation at all. Then, what about the armored demon that can fly alone? Is it a lord of hell? No. Agatha's voice was extremely dry. If you're not mistaken, I think it's most likely a senior demon. We're in trouble. Senior demon? Sylvie said in surprise. The Union knows very little about them. They only know that each of these demons has several kinds of abilities. They look similar to humans but are much larger. They're extremely powerful both in terms of strength and magic power. She swallowed. It's said that only Transcendence can compete with them. Transcendence? We don't even have an extraordinary now. Sylvie said anxiously. Hurry up and inform Leaf to stop the operation. Let's regroup and retreat to the First Army's defense line. Agatha bit her lip. It can fly alone because it's wearing a stone of flight. It's fine if it's only Lightning and Maggie, but there are so many of us. Once we leave Leaf's protection range, it's impossible for us to escape its pursuit. Although I've never seen a real senior demon, I've heard from Lady Alice that when you're fighting with these cunning and powerful demons, you have to focus all your energy on the enemy. Even a small mistake could cost you your life. After saying this, she patted the tree trunk hard until Leaf's voice sounded above her head. I'm listening. What's the matter? Agatha said firmly. There's a change of plan. Inform all the witches to change to plan 2. Let Nightingale keep an eye on the armored demon. Anna should seize the opportunity to attack directly. Don't hesitate. Plan 2 meant giving up on capturing the demon, and using the Sigil of Gods will to kill all the enemies. Are we really going to fight against the senior demon? Sylvie could not help hugging Maggie tightly. Exposing our back to the enemy will only lead to death. Going all out is our only chance, Agatha said slowly. The senior demon rarely appears alone. It always leads a large army. Now there are only 2 fearsome demons as guards. Even if it's not a transcendent, we may not lose. I see lightning. Leaf's voice sounded again. They're coming. Shoo, Sylvie held her breath. She heard 2 whistling sounds from the top of the tree, followed by the sound of something heavy landing in front of them. The demons' hurried footsteps echoed in the forest and soon faded away. Finally, only the low roars of the devil beasts could be heard. What's the situation? The armored demon didn't land. It's still following lightning. The other demons parked their mounts outside the forest and followed them into the forest. Wait, there seems to be one less demon. Sylvie observed the situation for a while. There are only 3 devil beasts left. Very well, I'll get rid of these stupid reptiles first, so that the enemy has nowhere to run even if they want to escape. Agatha pried open the crack in the bark. Your ability is not suitable for fighting, so just continue to hide here. But they can fly, Sylvie said anxiously. What if they want to escape? Don't worry. She looked at the eager little girl. We still have Maggie. Just as the devil beasts were waiting impatiently, one of their kind suddenly fell from the sky and landed behind them. It raised its wings and rotated around its tail, howling. Their attention was immediately drawn to it. Sylvie was surprised to find that the 3 devil beasts imitated Maggie. They spread their wings and wagged their tails as if they were dancing. In order to compete for space, the 3 monsters did not give way to each other and squeezed on the grass. Are they pleasing me? Chapter 552. It was the first time that Sylvie had seen such an incredible way of moving. Ice crystals condensed in front of her, as if paving a mirror-like path. Not only that, but the path seemed to be carrying her forward. In the blink of an eye, she was already close to the back of the first devil beast. Agatha stretched out her hands, and the surrounding green land was suddenly covered with white frost. There were even snowflakes floating in the air. The devil beast let out a scream and flapped its wings, trying to fly up, but it found that it could not move. Its thick limbs had been frozen to the ground. Ice crystals climbed up along its legs and feet, quickly covering its torso and wings. Almost at the same time, Maggie rushed forward, opened her bloody mouth, and bit the neck of another devil beast that was still dancing. The latter panicked and tried to break free, but the difference in size between the 2 was too great. It was like a cub that had not yet left the nest, and was suppressed by an adult beast. With a twist of her head, Maggie completely broke the devil beast's neck. The devil beast's body convulsed, and only its tail was still swaying. It smashed the devil beast, whose body had been frozen into ice, into pieces. At this time, the third devil beast reacted. Although it did not understand why the same kind would suddenly kill each other, it knew that the situation was not good. It spread its meter-long wings and directly soared into the air. But it was too late. Agatha followed closely behind and also flew. In other words, she was walking in the air. The ice crystals extended along with the devil beast, and in the blink of an eye, a bridge was built straight into the air. Agatha ran up the ice bridge, and soon the target was within the range of her magic power. Sylvie could not help but cover her mouth. The ice bridge was like a flexible viper, biting the tail of the devil beast, and then turning it into an ice sculpture. Probably because the end of the raised ice bridge could not bear such a heavy object, it cracked and broke. The falling Agatha was caught by Maggie, and the ice sculpture fell heavily to the ground and immediately broke into pieces. From the time Agatha walked out of the forest to the time when all 3 demonic beasts were killed, it was less than 20 breaths. This was the fighting style of senior witches. Sylvie could not help but envy Agatha. Gotcha. Nightingale checked the bullets and closed the cartridge. Just now, she heard Leaf's warning. The enemy has changed. Operation Melting Point will be changed to Plan 2. This meant that Iffy's task had been cancelled, and she had to do it now. Of course, the most important thing was to create an opportunity for Anna to release the sigil of God's will. As soon as she thought of Anna, Roland's request came to Nightingale's mind. No matter what, you have to bring her back. I'm counting on you. She clutched her chest and bit her lips hard. This mission should have been completed easily, but she found that there was a hidden emotion in her heart that was hard to describe. Now that the mission had unexpectedly become thorny, this emotion gradually expanded. If things were really that bad, did that mean that Anna might also? No, absolutely not, unless she died. Nightingale shook her head and suppressed the surging, chilling thoughts into the depths of her heart. Roland had solemnly entrusted this task to her, and she must not let him down. Even without this instruction, she would not be able to pass this hurdle. In a sense, Anna was the savior of all the witches of the Witch Cooperation Association. If there was really an oversight because of this reason, she would never forgive herself for the rest of her life. The enemy is coming. Leaf's voice rang in her ears. Nightingale cheered up and went in the direction Leaf had pointed. The world of fog was often cold and monotonous. Things that had nothing to do with magic power were twisted lines and ever-changing black and white blocks. This was the first time that Nightingale had seen such rich and mottled colors. Apart from the green forest background, 2 mad demons had a dim yellow luster on their arms and a light blue inside their bodies. The other 2 should be the fearsome demons that Leaf had warned them about. Their magic power was much stronger, and there seemed to be multiple magic vortexes in their bodies, the most obvious one being on their heads. There was also a senior demon that they needed to keep an eye on. If the intelligence was right, it should be monitoring the situation in the forest. There was no doubt that the fearsome demon, which could cause panic, should be the first target to be eliminated. Before they opened their eyes, when all 4 demons had passed through their hiding positions, Nightingale held the gun with both hands and leaped forward. She covered a distance of more than 10 meters in an instant, and pointed the muzzle directly at the back of a fearsome demon's head. At such a close distance, she did not even need to get out of the fog. As long as she was not unlucky, the gun barrel would not be cut in half by the lines that suddenly appeared. Gunpowder and gas sprayed out with a loud roar. In the black and white world, the target's head suddenly swelled up as if an unstoppable bullet had rushed into its skull, directly blowing its entire head into 5 or 6 pieces. Black and white flesh and residue burst forward, followed by a cloud of red mist rising into the sky. Only then did Nightingale notice that the red mist pipe was directly buried in its body. Another fearsome demon turned its head abruptly, and the bloody scar on its face opened up. Just when it was about to reveal its true face, a few vines suddenly hung down from the top of the tree, wrapped around its head, and pulled it back. At this time, the 2 mad demons happened to hear the gunshot and turned around. Their eyes met, and for a moment they froze in place, their bodies trembling. Without hesitation, Nightingale rewarded the remaining 3 bullets to the fearsome demon that Leaf had forcibly turned its head away. Anna also jumped out from her hiding place, and while the mad demons had not recovered from their shock, she directly used her blackfire to directly cut them into pieces. "Watch out!" Lightning, who had been in the air luring the enemy, suddenly shouted. As soon as Nightingale looked up, she found that a giant sword was slashing towards her. Instinctively, she wanted to escape into the fog, but found that the enemy who was waving the sword reached out to her. The black and white world that had already emerged was instantly shattered. What kind of ability was this? How could it interrupt magic? Nightingale had no time to dodge. As the sword was about to fall, a black curtain suddenly spread over her head. Not so much a curtain, but rather a very smooth mirror, and she could even see her surprised expression reflected on it. This was Blackfire. Clang! The giant sword hit the Blackfire fiercely. A look of pain appeared on Anna's face, and her body also trembled, but the Blackfire still did not disappear. This time, Nightingale no longer hesitated. She hugged Anna, summoned the fog again, and in one breath, more than 20 meters away, the armored demon also slowly landed on the ground. The death of its companion did not seem to have any effect on it. It calmly raised the giant sword with strange patterns engraved on it, and suddenly madly poured magic into the sword. Chapter 553. Is this the sigil of God's will? Nightingale widened her eyes. No, she did not see the magic stone being lit up. Instead, she saw a huge, lightless black hole forming in the enemy's hand. This was its own ability. Colorful magic power was constantly sucked into the black hole like a rapidly expanding vortex. The other witches all closed their eyes to see how strong the light was. However, in the mist, it was getting darker and darker. Then the demon stabbed its sword into the ground. With it as the center, dark waves of light swept across the entire forest. In an instant, the magic light was like a candle flickering in the wind. After shaking twice, it was completely extinguished. The mist world was broken again. Not only that, even the heart of the forest was erased. Leaf and Iffy were thrown out of the tree trunk and fell heavily on the ground. Especially Iffy, who spat out blood after falling on the ground. She could not even stand up for a while. Obviously, she was seriously injured. It had found something strange in the forest. No. Nightingale shook her head. As soon as possible, Leaf did it very secretly. It is not surprising that it noticed something strange in the air. What is really hard to understand is the way it broke through. It is obviously releasing magic power, but why is the light as bright as the God's Stone of Retaliation? Even the effect is comparable to that of the God's Stone, and even more flexible. But now is not the time to think about this. She reloaded a new cartridge, endured the discomfort of having her ability interrupted, and rushed toward the demon. Obviously, the attack just now was just a prelude. It had already turned around and walked toward Leaf, who could not move at all. Leaf was almost defenseless. When she was 10 meters away from the demon, Nightingale quickly pulled the trigger. Only at this distance could she be sure to hit the target. Sparks and smoke burst out of the demon's armored arm. It seemed that it did not expect that someone could disturb it at this time. It roared angrily and held its big sword in front of its body. Nightingale's heart suddenly sank. The bullet did not penetrate her arm, and then penetrate her body like usual. Instead, it directly stirred her chest into a ball of porridge. It was not even clear whether the bullet had penetrated her armor or not. As for the green greatsword that was as big as a door, it was even more hopeless. After shooting 5 bullets, Nightingale pulled out her dagger and leaped toward the demon's head. If they couldn't stop it here, no one could save Leaf. The demon's eyes glowed red. It sheathed its sword and made a diagonal slash. It was so fast that it did not look like a normal person could do it. Nightingale's reaction was also within her expectations. She faced the blade of the sword. Just as she was about to be cut in half, the mist appeared again. Although the lightless ripple could eliminate the effects of an ability on a large scale, it could not seal off magic power. Once the chaotic cyclone stabilized, the ability could be used again. This was something Nightingale, who could observe the flow of magic power, was well aware of. The outline of the great sword in the black and white world was instantly distorted. She found the break point on the blade as fast as she could, passed through the thick blade, and stabbed the dagger into the gap of the demon's helmet. With a dang sound, the dagger broke into two. It was actually a magic barrier? Damn it, just how many abilities does it have? Nightingale hurriedly retreated, and the armored demon, who had come to his senses, followed closely behind. He raised his sword and swept again. She tried the same trick again, but this time she was not so lucky. The demon waved its sword and reached out to grab something in the air. Nightingale, who was passing through the blade, was forcibly dragged out of the mist. The moment she returned to reality, a small part of the blade was still inside her body. A stream of blood flew out, and a long wound appeared on her waist. Soroya's special protective suit was also torn from the inside out. Nightingale let out a muffled groan. Ignoring the stinging pain in her waist, she landed on the ground and rolled backwards, trying to avoid the demon's attack. Unfortunately, the demon's step covered a distance of more than 2 meters. Coupled with the demon's speed, which was no less than that of an extraordinary, such an escape was completely futile. Just as the blade was about to slash down, several beams of purple light appeared beside the demon and quickly converged, completely sticking its limbs to its body. It was Iffy's magic cage. "Crush it!" Nightingale shouted. "I can't do it." Iffy gritted her teeth and said, "It's too strong." Iffy's fist was completely closed, but the beam of light could not shrink any further. Instead, it trembled as if it was about to burst. The demon let out a deafening roar and raised its hands, breaking the cage that bound it. Before it could lift its sword, another circle of light came down. "Let Mississippi." Anna used the golden thunder. "Hurry," Iffy said word by word. Judging from her expression, such a cage could not hold for long. However, the demon and Iffy were very close to each other, and the sigil of gods would undoubtedly cover both of them. "Now," Nightingale shouted to Anna in the distance, "activate the sigil." When their eyes met, Anna immediately understood what she was thinking and raised the metal piece in her hand with all her strength. The forest was suddenly filled with golden light, and the sky was sprinkled with rays of light. The demon howled. It had probably seen such a scene before. Its angry tone was mixed with a trace of fear, and it struggled more violently. The demon could not use the dispelling ability continuously. Nightingale realized that this might be their only chance. With a series of thunder, the divine will came. Nightingale covered her wound and released the mist. When the dark thunder was about to hit their heads, she appeared behind Iffy in a flash, hugged Iffy with both hands, and leaped to one side without stopping. The whole movement was done in one go, and Iffy was pulled out of the attacking range of the Sigil of Gods will in 2 steps. This move not only required willpower and courage, but also Anna's cooperation. If the latter did not control her magic properly, the first lightning strike would land slightly in front of them, and the subsequent bombardment would seal off all their escape routes. Nightingale believed that Anna could do it. No one could do it better than her in terms of magic power control, and the facts proved this point. The ground where the senior demon stood was instantly covered by the golden light, and even the weeds and vines were turned into ashes. Anna swayed a few times, and could no longer support her weak body. She fell to the ground. "Anna." Leaf finally recovered some strength and stumbled towards her. "She's fine. She just ran out of magic power." Nightingale grinned. She felt a tearing pain in her waist every time she spoke. Fortunately, although the wound was quite scary, it did not hurt her organs. As long as she did not continue to exercise vigorously and cause the wound to rupture, she would not be in danger. "You're hurt," Iffy said with a complicated look. "Let me bandage it for you." Nightingale nodded. Just when she was about to lift her robe, she suddenly froze. She saw a black figure slowly walking out of the flying smoke and dust. The demon's helmet had several broken horns, like a collapsed stone tower. Its exquisite armor was full of cracks and mud. One of its arms and the giant sword were missing, but it was still alive. His opponent had forcefully withstood the attack that should have been fatal. The demon hissed ferociously. Nightingale was not sure whether it was laughing or not, but she could hear the irrepressible excitement and murderous intent in its voice. Its movements were no longer calm, and the red light was much dimmer. It looked like it would fall at any time. However, she and Leaf could not move, Anna was in a coma, lightning was missing, and Iffy was running out of magic power. No one could stop it now. The witch beside her suddenly stood up. "What are you going to do?" Nightingale shouted in a low voice. "Fight until the last moment." Iffy held the dagger hidden in her clothes in her hand. "This is the mission of a combat witch. You can still use your ability, right? Take them and hide. If you can't take all of them, take at least one of them." Nightingale suddenly remembered Roland's request. That's right. She had to take Anna back. This was the agreement between her and His Majesty, and she had to do it no matter what. At this moment, a familiar roar suddenly came from the sky. Roar. Chapter 554. As soon as the demon raised its head, it was smashed into the ground by Maggie. The strong impact made Nightingale feel the ground tremble. If an ordinary person was hit like this, all his bones would have been crushed. "Well done, Maggie." Leaf clenched her fists and said, "Stomp it to death. Bite it with your mouth and whip it with your tail." Even Iffy shouted excitedly. "Ow." Maggie held proudly. She put Agatha down, and was about to stand up and continue. Suddenly, the transformation was cancelled. The ferocious devil beast had disappeared. The little girl fell to the ground in a daze, not knowing what had happened. Magic Slayer. Agatha was the first to react. An ice cone rose from the ground and the demon, who had just climbed up, was knocked away again and smashed through several trees. She did not give the demon any chance to escape. She chased after it and froze its feet. Now, Maggie, who had recovered from the shock, pulled out her pistol and fired continuously at the immobile demon. Nightingale bit her lip and reloaded her gun. She asked Iffy to help her and joined in the suppression. The demon's armor flashed continuously, but it soon weakened. The red light in its eyes was faintly discernible. The demon roared hoarsely and waved its hand at Agatha, sending her flying. The ice crystals under its feet disappeared instantly. Then it soared into the air, swaying as it tried to escape. "Don't let it go," Agatha shouted. "Maggie, let me do it." Leaf grabbed the sigil of God's will in Anna's hand, and injected all her magic power into it. Although she had been forcibly removed from the state of Heart of Forest, her magic power had not been consumed much. She could still light up the fourth gem of the sigil during normal tests. Soon, the forest was filled with golden light again. The demon turned its head and let out a strange cry, as if it could not believe what it had seen. The golden thunder engulfed it in an instant. This time it didn't manage to survive. "Is the demon dead?" Nightingale asked weakly. "Only half the armor is left, Ku." Maggie dragged the enemy back. If it were not for the exquisite carvings on the edge, it would be hard to believe that the greenish-black burnt object was the demon's body. Apparently, it was not as sturdy as they thought. Lightning was also found. When the enemy released the black ripples, the little girl was affected and fell down like a brick. Her head hit a tree branch and she fainted. Fortunately, he wasn't too high off the ground at that time, and with the dense foliage acting as a buffer, other than a big bump on his head, he didn't suffer any other injuries. Probably because she was not able to participate in the battle, she seemed very upset. After confirming that everyone was fine, she said dejectedly, "I'll go inform Brian and ask him to send someone to pick you up." "You all survived," Agatha exclaimed. "This is a miracle." "I don't know how to report to His Majesty that we were tricked by a mere demon." Nightingale sighed painfully. "No, this is definitely not an ordinary victory. The enemy is a magic slayer." Agatha shook her head. "Perhaps several senior witches can fight a senior demon, but absolutely no one can defeat a magic slayer. Only the 3 chiefs of the Union can compete with it. Does it have to be a transcendent?" Leaf frowned. "That's right," Agatha said affirmatively. "This is a lesson the Union learned with blood." "What kind of ability does the magic slayer have?" "It's not an ability but a title," Maggie explained. She explained, "Senior demons have several abilities, but unlike witches, their abilities are not awakened. Someone once observed that a senior demon, who had led troops to attack Tequila many times, had 2 additional magic cyclones in its body within a few years, which means that it has at least 2 new abilities. No one knows how the enemy did it. It seems that they are naturally better at using magic power than us. And the Magic Slayer doesn't refer to a certain type of cyclone, but to the ability that is strong enough to produce the effect of a god stone. Her words made Nightingale's heart skip a beat. You mean magic power abstinence? To be precise, it's interference, Agatha corrected her. Their ability attacks have a chance to break through the defense of a god stone of retaliation, and their magic attacks will be restrained and weakened. Moreover, the Magic Slayer can also dispel the effect of magic power and stop the effect of magic power. It's a formidable enemy for any witch. I don't quite understand. Iffy was puzzled. Isn't this a special ability? It's not that simple, Aggie sighed. Take Anna as an example. If she can become a Magic Slayer, it means that her black fire can exist even within the range of the God Stone of Retaliation. At the same time, her black fire will form an interference zone around it, and all other abilities will be rendered ineffective, unless the opponent is another Magic Slayer. Nightingale could not help but think of the dull black hole. From the beginning of the battle, the Magic Slayer's various attacks had not flashed with any magic power. Whether it was the barrier or the phantom claws, they all had extremely dim shadows, just like the scene when she was attacked by the sigil of God's will. She briefly described what she had seen. Is that why the sigil of God's will didn't completely kill it? Probably, Agatha said with a shrug. After all, it's my first time experiencing such a battle. There's no record of the Union using the sigil of God's will to fight against the Magic Slayer. Then they won with their own strength. Exactly. Agatha nodded. This is the real strength of transcendence. Wearing the God Stone of Retaliation, they are like the sun on the battlefield. Wherever they go, the demons will melt away like spring snow. And above the transcendence is the center of the sun. If you can meet Lady Alice, you'll definitely be impressed by her power. Unfortunately, there's only one Alice, Nightingale thought. Even if all the 3 chiefs were included, there were only 3 transcendents. Has there never been a witch in the Union who became a Magic Slayer? As far as I know, no, she replied. And there probably never will be. Witches and demons are fundamentally different. Demons can give birth to countless mad demons, but we can't awaken countless Alice. No amount of training can change this. Hey. Maggie, who had been fiddling with the armor, suddenly dug out a palm-sized cyan box from the black remains. Look, what's this? Agatha took the box and tried to break it open. It's locked. Let me try. Nightingale entered the mist and looked at the square metal box. Just as the outline of the box changed, she put her finger into the box and pulled it open. Chapter 555. Gem's Coup. Maggie brushed aside the white hair on her forehead, revealing a pair of curious eyes. They're magic stones. Agatha picked up the stones on the ground and examined them for a while. Although I'm not sure what kind they are, judging from their color, they should be high-quality God Stones of Retaliation before they were transformed. The loot of a senior demon can't be bad, Leaf said with a smile. I just didn't expect it to hide the box in its body. Well, if that's the case, will the other demons also have the same box, Coup? Maggie said excitedly. I'll go look for it. Be careful not to touch the jar that stores the red mist, Agatha warned. Half an hour later, Maggie ran back excitedly with 2 black boxes in her hands. We found them from the demons in colorful clothes. Nightingale still took out magic stones, but this time the stones looked dimmer and smaller, but there were more of them. Agatha gathered the magic stones together and frowned. What's wrong? Nightingale asked. Is there something wrong? Magic stones seem to be too many. Isn't it good to have more? She shook her head gently. The Union has killed thousands of fearsome demons. If magic stones were so easy to get, the Quest Society wouldn't have tried so hard to capture and raise chaos beasts. Why do they carry so many magic stones with them? It's probably accumulated over the past 400 years. Nightingale revealed an ugly smile. It's just like an unlucky guy who finally managed to save up a sum of money and decided to go home to farm after finishing his work. As a result, we shot him dead, and all his inheritance fell into our hands. No one laughed out loud. Everyone understood what this meant. If a large group of demons had never stopped producing magic stones for 400 years, how much war resources would they have accumulated? Forget it. It's useless to think about it. After a brief silence, Agatha broke the silence. Anyway, we have no other choice. Under the guidance of lightning, the first army finally arrived at the woodland. Are you all okay? Vendi anxiously jumped down from Lightning's back and checked each sister one by one. Anna, it's a coma caused by the exhaustion of magic power. Don't worry, Nightingale comforted. Everyone is fine. I've said it before, Lightning's head had been bandaged, revealing only the fine bangs on her forehead, but Sister Vendi kept urging me. What is this? Brian looked at the corpses on the ground in surprise. Are they demons? That's right, dead demons. Nightingale shrugged. You have to let the soldiers carry them back. Meat, armor, clothes, and weapons. None of them can be missing. This is His Majesty's order. Yes. Upon hearing the order, Brian immediately became serious. I'll arrange for someone to do it. It's a pity that we didn't catch a living demon. Agatha sighed. The plan to make the sigil has to be postponed again. A living demon? Lightning tilted her head and said, probably. What? Everyone turned to look at her. Where? I'm not sure. She blinked. If the demon can swim, it might still be alive. In the afternoon, the paddle steamers left the riverbank and turned around to return to Neverwinter. The deck of one of the ships was surrounded by curious and bewildered soldiers of the First Army. Are they the enemies we'll face in the future? They don't look like much, except that they're big. Hush, what are you talking about? Someone shouted. Don't you see that His Majesty's witches are badly injured? It's not like you haven't seen their abilities. That's right. Those dead witches must be extremely ferocious, at least much more difficult to deal with than demonic beasts. Even Lady Anna fell into their trap. Another person nodded and added, at that time, she alone blocked the breach of the city wall and blocked the attack of the demonic beasts. Most of the soldiers agreed with this statement. I was there that day. Lady Anna saved my life. If it weren't for her, I'm afraid I would have been trampled to death by a wild boar. It's a pity that Miss Angel isn't here. Otherwise, they'll recover immediately. Standing at the stern, Nightingale and Agatha looked at each other and could not help shaking their heads with a smile. Now that these ordinary people had already regarded witches as companions who could fight side by side, it was a new feeling for both of them. One of them had lived in the Witch Empire, which treated ordinary people as slaves, and the other had been hiding from the people and being ostracized and persecuted. Although the content of their feelings was completely different, they were both incredible. What do you think? Nightingale secretly sighed and asked, do you mean the lost experimental subjects? Agatha laughed. I think they're extremely lucky. The target of the soldiers was the drowning mad demon imprisoned in the iron cage. Just as Lightning had said, the unlucky demon had been hit by the scorching flame wave when the hydrogen balloon exploded. It had only regained consciousness after falling into the water, but its body was severely injured, and it could not swim back to the shore even after struggling for a long time. Finally, it was captured by Maggie, who was searching for it. According to Maggie, if it had not roared loudly, she would not have noticed it. Apparently, the mad demon had regarded Maggie as a rescue devil beast, but as soon as it came ashore, it became a witch's captive. Considering that Iffy's magic power and physical strength had reached their limit, they might not be able to trap the demon for too long. In the end, they decided to cut off the demon's limbs and let Agatha seal the wounds with ice. In this way, the demon would not be able to commit suicide or die immediately before the red mist ran out. I didn't expect to be able to successfully complete the task after such a big accident. It's really lucky. Nightingale curled her lips. By the way, don't you want to take a rest? Agatha pointed to her waist. I feel much better after applying some herbs. She waved her hand indifferently. Before I met His Majesty, Leaf was the one who solved all the pain of the Witch Cooperation Association. Fortunately, everyone is safe and sound. Agatha exhaled. I was negligent in this operation. Senior demons? That's not your fault. Nightingale comforted her. No one knew they would appear alone in this remote place. This is also something I don't understand. After all, they always hide behind the army and never act alone. Moreover, their numbers are extremely small. During the decades of war with the Union, all the senior demons that appeared were recorded. Including those that died in battle, there were less than 20 of them. She paused. I thought I would have to wait until the bloody moon to have a chance to meet them, but after seeing those magic stones, I'm suddenly not so sure. Nightingale quickly understood the meaning of her words. However, as soon as she figured it out, a chill rose in her heart. We don't know the demon's lifespan, growth limit, promotion and reproduction method. How have they developed over the past 400 years? Agatha whispered. If the enemy can accumulate a large number of magic stones, can they also accumulate a large number of senior demons? Chapter 556. There are so many ships. Steele leaned against the porthole of the poop and looked at the ships coming and going on the Redwater River. Since they entered the western region, the river suddenly became busy, and most of the ships were strange stone ships without sails. According to the captain, they called them paddle steamers, which relied on steam power to move forward. Their speed was not affected by the wind, and they were much faster than sailing ships when sailing against the current. They often ran ahead with a trail of black smoke trailing behind them. As for how the steam pushed the large wooden wheels on both sides of the hull, no one could tell. But one thing was certain, they were all made by Neverwinter. Steele estimated in her heart that she could see a paddle steamer almost every half an hour. If they were all carrying goods, then the material absorption capacity of Neverwinter would undoubtedly be astonishing. She learned this from the merchants. The larger a city was, the higher the ability to absorb goods. As long as one stayed on its official road for 2 days, one could roughly judge how prosperous the city was, and how many business opportunities there were. If one was good at communication, one could even analyze the most popular goods in the city. Obviously, this Redwater River was the most important transportation route in the western region. And the busy river also meant that the propaganda she saw in King's City might not be His Majesty's boasting. In a short period of time, he integrated the western region into a new city, and the number of permanent residents and commercial trade had already surpassed the original capital. And such an extraordinary heir to the throne had a notorious reputation of being ignorant and incompetent, foppish and paranoid. Thinking of these rumors, Steele became more and more curious about Roland Wimbledon. Miss Conrad, are you looking at the ships again? The door of the room was pushed open, and a handsome brown-haired man dressed in luxurious clothes came in. Do you want to go out for some fresh air? Is it boring staying here all the time? No, it's good here. Steele straightened up and nodded to him. Thank you for your hospitality. You're welcome. He laughed. I'm lucky to be able to travel with such a beautiful lady like you. Steele had heard too much of such flattery, but she still responded with a pleasant expression. If you hadn't lent a hand, I'm afraid I would have been squeezed together with those goods and refugees. Of course, I can't sit back and watch this happen. The man sat down opposite her. No jewelry merchant would want their jewelry to be covered in dust. He was the owner of the Eternal Spring, the gemstone merchant from the capital, Victor. After the original ship was burned, Steele quickly chose this 2-masted ship from the other ships heading to the western region. It was not a passenger ship, nor did it accept employment. Instead, it was Victor's private ship. But for the Pearl of the Northern region, as long as the owner of the ship was male, it was not a problem. She pretended to be a noble lady from the northern region, who went to the western region to look for her lost relatives. With a few words, she made Victor feel sorry for her, and invited her to board the Eternal Spring. Compared to ordinary small sailboats and cargo ships, the Eternal Spring had a comfortable cabin at the stern. Not only was it spacious and bright, It did not have the rotten smell of wood left behind by years of traveling on the waterway. Her master had even prepared 2 servants for her, but he didn't even accept a single golden dragon. Of course, the only price was that Victor would visit her from time to time to express his generosity and care. But Steele, who was good at mingling in the aristocratic circle, had long been accustomed to this. If the other party was good enough, she would even enjoy the feeling of controlling him. Although these ships can move without wind, they're still a little too simple. Victor poured himself a cup of black tea. I once boarded a paddle steamer and carefully observed it. It's not only noisy, but also very shaky. It's good for hauling goods, but not a good choice for long-distance travel. Of course it's not as comfortable as the eternal spring. Steele chuckled. But why do I feel as if they appeared overnight? There weren't such ships in the western region before, right? You're right. They appeared overnight. Victor curled his lips. I used to go to Longsong Stronghold. There was no such strange thing. After just one winter, they're everywhere. 20 or 30 paddle steamers were built in one winter. Steele couldn't help but be surprised. As the successor of the Kant family, she naturally knew what it meant. Because a big city needed to digest a large number of materials, its expansion was also limited by the transportation capacity of materials. This kind of fast-producing paddle steamer was obviously an excellent tool to expand the transportation capacity. If it could continuously transport food and commodities from all over the kingdom to the western region, the speed of Neverwinter's expansion was likely to be far beyond people's imagination. As for the noise and tremors, they were not worth mentioning at all. By the way, Miss Conrad, don't care about those unaesthetic stone ships. I have something more interesting here. Maybe it can help you pass the time. Victor called a maid beside him and whispered something in her ear. The latter nodded and turned to leave the room. What is it? Something that can match your beauty, he said proudly. It's also my old profession. The maid quickly returned to the poop with a rather exquisite booklet. Victor spread it in front of Steele. Which one do you like? There were many patterns of bright crystals drawn on the parchment. The brushwork was exquisite and the color was bright. Even the transparent luster was leaping on the paper. Obviously, the painter who drew the booklet was very good at this. This is a gem. To be precise, it's a gemstone. Victor explained carefully. When I buy them, I set the price according to the standard in the booklet. Compared with the carved and polished jewelry, the gemstone has a different flavor. If you're interested in any kind of gemstone, please tell me. Of course, if you prefer the finished product, I can also go back to the King's City and ask a jeweler to make a jewelry for you. Steele casually flipped through the booklet and handed it back to him. Thanks, but no need. Victor took the booklet in surprise. You're not interested in these? I don't know the whereabouts of my relatives. I'm really not in the mood to choose these luxurious gifts. Please forgive me, Steele said in a low voice. If she agreed here, he would also pester her after arriving at Neverwinter, which would not be good for her next action. Although most women would be fascinated by these shiny things, she would rather appreciate the steam engine that propelled the paddle steamer. Compared with the jewelry that only circulated among the nobles, those things were really valuable. Soon after Victor left, a series of long whistles suddenly came from the bow, rising and falling, deep and vigorous, as if a huge fleet was leaving the port. Chapter 557. This is Border Town. No Neverwinter? Edith walked down the gangway and looked at the busy and orderly scene in front of her. She could not help but be dumbfounded. Although she had made all kinds of speculations before arriving, she found that she had underestimated this city. The area of the dock area was more than 3 times larger than that of King's City. On one side, it was crowded with sailboats and cement boats, and the ore and coal on the yard were piled up into a small hill. On the other side, a dozen paddle steamers were slowly leaving the pier in a column, and there were many people standing by the embankment to see them off. All the people on the boats wore uniforms and stood straight on both sides of the ship. Even Edith could feel their fighting spirit. In the past, this kind of expression would only appear on the faces of the victorious knight, and undoubtedly, these people were not nobles. The center of the dock was a gathering place for merchants, refugees, and migrants, mainly with various kinds of sailboats. After people got off the boats, they were separated by a group of men in black, who asked them to line up and pass the inspection. In the entire dock area, there were no less than 1,000 people, and such a bustling scene even dwarfed King's City. The dock has actually grown longer again, Victor said in amazement. Does His Majesty intend to turn the entire riverside into a dock area? Again? Edith noticed his choice of words. At least last autumn, the dock here wasn't so wide. He spread out his hands. Of course, there weren't so many people either. What are those checkpoints for? Are they collecting taxes? There's no such thing as entering the city. You only have to pay taxes when you sell things, Victor explained enthusiastically. And no stalls can be set up in the city. All sales have to be done in the convenience market in the square. Those men in black are equivalent to the patrols of other cities. They set up the checkpoints to register people's identity and clear the demonic plague. Not extortion and blackmail? Edith winked at her brother, who nodded and took out his wallet to prepare the money. No, Miss Conrad, I mean equivalent to the patrols, the gem merchant said with a smile and waved his hand. In fact, they never charge extra fees. I know it's hard to believe, but it's true. I was as surprised as you when I passed the inspection for the first time. Come with me, the merchant channel is much faster. Just as he said, after the black-clothed man verified Victor's identity, he let everyone pass through the checkpoint without asking for a single copper royal. Then I must look for a clean and comfortable hotel, and go round to the convenience market. He turned his head. What are you going to do, Miss Conrad? If you're not familiar with this place, I can help you. Thank you. Edith pretended to be grateful. She pinched the corner of her skirt and bent her knees slightly. You've helped me a lot along the way. That's enough. I'll go to the city hall to ask for help. I should be able to find some news about my family there. It's nothing. It's my honor to be able to meet such an outstanding noble lady like you. Please don't stand on ceremony. After a while, Edith finally got rid of Victor's pestering. When the merchant said goodbye to her, he kept waving at her, and said that if she encountered any trouble, she could always find him at the Holy Mountain Inn. Sis, you're really popular, Cole said, smacking his lips. Edith glanced at him. What should you call me? Ahem, Miss Edith. The Duke's second son could not help but tremble. Shall we also find a hotel to stay in? No, let's go to the castle to submit the documents first, she said without hesitation. Then we'll get in touch with His Majesty as soon as possible. But we don't have heads. Cole reminded her in a low voice. Then we'll do it as if we don't have heads. Edith shrugged. Do you still remember what I told you? Show your sincerity. The Kant family's loyalty can't be represented by just 2 heads. And even if there were, it would probably be stinky long ago. It was also not a good idea to present 2 deformed heads to His Majesty. She thought that everything had deviated from the predetermined course, since he left the king's city. What to do would depend on the specific situation. In the end, the ability of the negotiator was the key factor that determined the outcome of the negotiation. Your Majesty, an emissary delegation from the northern region is waiting outside the castle, hoping to receive you. The guard Sean walked into the office and reported. The leader claims to be Cole Kant, the second son of the current Duke of the Northern Region, Carwin Kant. Sir Barev has already checked the documents and family insignia. They shouldn't be forged. The Northern Region? Roland put down the blueprint in his hand in surprise. Isn't that Timothy's territory? Did they say why they're here? Yes. The guard looked excited. Sir Cole said that the Duke is willing to pledge allegiance to you. Pledge allegiance? Roland frowned. This is really troublesome. Actually, he did not need the allegiance of a feudal lord, which would not only not help the development of the kingdom, but would also have an impact on the current centralized system. Roland hoped that the other side would hide in his territory and wait for him to sweep over. Only by completely crushing the old forces could he successfully establish a centralized state power. However, he could not refuse to meet them. If the other side deliberately ignored the emissary delegation they sent out to negotiate, the other nobles might lose hope and decide to unite to fight. This was not a problem militarily, but he was mainly worried that it would affect the people of the eastern region and the northern region. Roland had already regarded the people of the kingdom as his wealth, so he naturally wanted to keep as many people as possible. After thinking for a moment, he slowly nodded and said, "Take them to the reception hall and call Barav." "Yes," Sean replied excitedly. Judging from the guard's expression, he probably thinks that only the eastern part of the kingdom is not under my control. Roland thought to himself. However, sometimes things were not as simple as they seemed. At the same time, he also made a decision. No matter what, taking back the rights of the feudal nobles was an unshakable principle. This must be accurately expressed to all the nobles to show his determination to reform the new policy. If the rebellious nobles dared to attack the people, they would pay a heavy price. Entering the reception hall, there were only 2 emissaries sitting at one end of the long table. One of them should be the Duke's second son, Colcant. The other person made Roland's eyes slightly brighten. It was a beautiful woman who seemed to be Sir Cole's assistant, but her aura was more eye-catching than that of Sir Cole. Of course, in terms of appearance, witches were the most dazzling pearls, so Roland did not pay too much attention to them. After all, assistants in this era were likely to play the role of lovers or maids. Chapter 558. A gift? Roland raised his eyebrows. What is it? The Hawes and Lista families of the northern region. Your Majesty, the 2 earls refused to obey your rule and colluded with other nobles to rebel. My father saw through their tricks and gave them the punishment they deserved, Cole said regretfully. But due to my negligence, I didn't expect you to return to the western region in advance, and the heads as evidence were destroyed on the way. Wait, your father directly executed the 2 earls? He tilted his head and looked at his assistant. Yes, this is more intense than I expected. Using the heads of the 2 earls as proof of allegiance means that it will be difficult for them to gain the support of the eastern region nobles. At least, the possibility of them joining forces to rebel against my territory is greatly reduced. Roland thought to himself. But now that Nightingale was not around, he did not know whether Cole was deceiving him or not. He pondered for a moment and whispered to Barav beside him. Are there 2 families in the northern region? Horsehead Hawes and Double Spear Lista are both aristocratic families in the northern region, more famous than the 5 families in the western region. The ancestors of the Lista family fought for the Wimbledon family, and the double spears on their family emblem were taken from the flag of the Kingdom of Grey Castle. Barav said unhurriedly while stroking his beard. Barav stroked his beard and said unhurriedly. Of course, this was more than 200 years ago. But the Kant family is not famous. I remember it was a family that only appeared in the last 50 years. I didn't expect that Timothy would choose Carwin Kant as the ruler of the northern region. Even if it was to contain the other 2 families, it would be difficult for them to play their role if there was a huge gap in strength, and it would easily cause dissatisfaction among the older families. So what he said is true? Roland automatically ignored the old director's nagging to show off his extensive knowledge. Well, it's unlikely that he's lying, Barav said in a low voice. This matter concerns the honor of the nobles. If you agree to accept their allegiance, and it's proven to be a lie, the northern region will be in chaos first. What she said made sense. He nodded slightly, and it didn't matter whether it was a lie or not. The key was that his bottom line was already there. If he could accept giving up his fief, then everything could be discussed. If he insisted on seizing power, then no matter how precious the gift was, it would be meaningless. Thinking of this, Roland smiled at Cole. First of all, I have to express my gratitude to the Duke. Protecting the honor of the royal family is the responsibility of every noble, and your father did a good job. Secondly, the 2 earls deserved it. The kingdom will not pursue Duke Kant's actions. Is that so? Father will be very happy to hear this. Cole seemed to sigh in relief. He has always wanted to serve a real king, and now he finally has the chance. Is that so? I'm also very willing to accept the Duke of the North's allegiance, provided that he follows the new laws of Grey Castle. New laws? He was a little surprised. What's that? It's about the withdrawal of the nobles' enfeoffment rights. Roland looked at Cole's expression and said word by word, "From now on, there will be no more enfeoffment of nobles in the kingdom. You can understand it as all the territories in Grey Castle will only have one master, and that is the king." "What? Your Majesty, this?" Cole's expression changed dramatically, and he turned to look at his assistant again. "Is this guy really the Duke's second son? Although he looks a little young, he should not be worse than his maid." At least the latter just opened her mouth slightly and looked calm. Of course, it could be that she did not understand the meaning of his words at all. "Don't worry. The nobles are still the nobles. Your luxurious life will not change, and you still have the opportunity to reach new heights." Roland clapped his hands and asked the attendant to hand over the propaganda booklet that had been prepared in advance. This set of laws has been fully implemented in Longsong's stronghold. In the booklet, you can read many short stories about the reform and examples of nobles who have devoted themselves to it. It seems that the nobles will lose some of their privileges, but in fact they will be liberated from their fiefs and thrown into the big stage of the kingdom, or even the whole continent. Cole looked puzzled. "But I don't know." Cole's performance made Roland a little disappointed, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was normal. After all, he was still the second son who had just reached adulthood. He probably only played the role of a messenger on this trip, and could not make the final decision. "It doesn't matter. You can send the message back to Duke Carr. Before he replies, you can stay in Neverwinter and enjoy the unique scenery here. I think you'll like it here." Although sending the second son showed his sincerity, Roland did not intend to waste this sincerity. He temporarily detained him as a guarantee to prevent the other party from taking risks out of desperation. He thought that the meeting would come to an end, but he did not expect Cole to make another request. "Your Majesty, can I see how the paddle steamers and steam engines are made in your territory?" This was a novel request. Roland looked at him with great interest. "Are you interested in this?" "Yes, I've heard of these strange boats in King's City. After coming to the western region, I found that they are everywhere. I'm very curious about how paddle steamers travel without sails," Cole said with a hand on his chest. "I see." He nodded with a smile. "I'll ask Barov to arrange it." After dealing with the northern region messengers, Roland returned to his office and was about to finish the design in his hand. Suddenly, he heard rapid knocking outside the window. When he turned around, he saw two figures he didn't expect. Lightning was lying on the windowsill, and Maggie was squatting on top of her head and pecking at the glass. Roland's heart suddenly tightened. It was only the third day. The paddle steamers should not have come back so soon. Did something happen? Why did you come back first? He opened the French window and asked hurriedly, "Where are the others?" "Your Majesty, we caught the demon. But Anna, Leaf and Nightingale are all injured, Ku. Fortunately, it's not a big problem. But it still hurts, Ku. Would you allow Miss Nana to come with us?" Listening to the two rushing to finish, Roland felt like his heart was on a roller coaster. He let out a long breath and asked, "Are they really okay?" "No, Ku. I'll ask someone to bring Nana here." He turned around and walked out of the room. "Next time, remember to say everything in one breath." The next evening, two paddle steamers finally appeared at the west end of the Redwater River. In order to prevent the crowd from panicking at the sight of the demon, the First Army had cleared the number 22 trestle and prepared a covered carriage. A temporary wooden house was also set up in the castle's back garden as a laboratory. The research on the demon and the sigil would be carried out under the supervision of Leaf. Seeing Anna and Nightingale coming down the trestle, Roland was completely relieved. It had only been 4 days since they set off, but it felt like months. Especially after hearing the news that the two were injured, time passed even slower. "Thank you for your hard work." He raised the corner of his mouth and opened his arms to Anna. The latter did not answer, but quickly threw herself into his arms and hugged him tightly. Nightingale sighed and said, "You said you would wait for us in the castle." "The dock isn't safe, Your Majesty." "You too," Roland said with a smile. Thank you for your hard work. Well. She turned her head away uncomfortably. Actually, it's okay. Anna released Roland and pulled Nightingale over. Then Vendi Leaf. This time, all the witches hugged Roland, including Agatha and Iffy. Chapter 559. After dinner, Roland immediately rushed to the back garden. Although he wanted to spend some time with Anna, the demon's red mist was limited, so he had to start the experiment as soon as possible. Almost all the members of the Witch Union were present. Even those who did not participate in the test did not want to miss the opportunity to observe the enemy up close. The mad demon, whose limbs had been cut off, was under Breeze's control, and was lying quietly in the center of the makeshift house. It was the first time that Roland had seen an alien creature that was completely different from human beings. It was huge, taller than Iron Axe by a head. Its frozen arms were as thick as an adult's thighs, and its muscles were well-defined and covered with blue veins. At first glance, Roland could tell that it was extremely strong. Its rough skin was blue-black, which was normal considering that the demon's blood was blue. Roland reached out his hand and touched its body. He could clearly feel the heat, which proved that its basic metabolism was relatively fast. In a sense, the faster the metabolism of a species, the less adaptable it was to the environment. As the mad demon's breathing apparatus was closely connected to its helmet, Roland could not see its face for the time being. But overall, it was obvious that it was an advanced chordate. Compared to the more exaggerated fearsome demon and the Lord of Hell, the mad demon looked more like a human. Of course, according to Agatha, this type of junior demon was extremely low in intelligence and could not be compared to human beings. In terms of cunning and resourcefulness, senior demons were more like humans. Among the 5 demons, the Magic Slayer was melted by the sigil of God's will, and 1 mad demon was chopped up by Anna. We've used up 2 of the remaining 3 cans of red mist. Agatha rubbed her forehead. She looked a little tired and her voice was much gentler than usual. The mist can only last until tomorrow evening, so if we want to make a sigil, we can't do it beyond tomorrow afternoon. I need half a day to melt the base of the sigil, and I may fail several times during this period. The red mist is fatal to witches. How did you replace the gas tank? I asked a mortal to connect the pipe. She pointed to the bone container and said, I also brought back these used-up storage tanks. They may be useful in the future. Roland nodded, then looked at Breeze. Can you control it to use magic? If it can do that, the latter replied seriously, I don't need to specifically control the target's every move. Instead, it's similar to giving orders and forcing the target to follow my orders. This kind of instruction is beyond the limits of language and thinking. Even demonic beasts will obey it. Of course, it can't be too complicated. Very well, he instructed Nana. First, connect the limbs. I want to see the power and interval of the mad demon's spear throwing. Wait in the castle. Lily frowned. Mystery Moon, Hummingbird, and the others immediately hid behind Vendi. However, Paper and Summer, who had never experienced the destruction of the Witch Cooperation Association, did not react so strongly. Their faces showed more curiosity than fear. There won't be any problems, right? Soft Feathers mumbled. Don't worry, we'll be watching, Iffy said calmly. During dinner, Roland had a general understanding of the operation at the melting point. The unexpected senior demon had thrown the team into confusion and put them in danger for a while. However, the witches had fought together and finally defeated the strong enemy. Iffy had played a very important role in this. Especially after the Sigil of God's Will failed. Iffy's determination to buy time for everyone to escape had greatly changed the other witches' opinions. Iffy's attitude towards non-combat witches had also become gentle. During this period, even Iffy herself had not noticed the subtle changes. Perhaps it would take a long time for her to truly integrate into the team, but in Roland's view, at least there was an opportunity for both sides to integrate. Nana squatted down unwillingly and began to treat the demon. If it had been conventional medicine, it would have been impossible to complete this operation. In the absence of antifreeze, freezing the limbs could at most prevent them from rotting, but it could not prevent water from freezing and destroying the tissue structure. However, under the unreasonable magic repair, the condition of the broken limbs had obviously improved, and even the mottled burn marks had faded little by little. When the hands and feet were connected, the originally dark skin gradually turned green, which meant that the blood had begun to flow. After a quarter of an hour, it silently got up from the ground and slowly walked out of the shed. The witches also filed out. Unlike the swarm of bees when they came, there was a long line behind Vindy and Scroll. Roland could not help but laugh when he saw the faces of Mystery Moon and the other witches full of fear. Leaf had already prepared a shooting range. 2 rows of olive trees led straight to the garden wall, and at the end of the vine hung a steel plate and a breastplate. The target was about 200 meters away from the wooden shed, which was also the conventional combat distance of a revolving rifle. Let's start. Roland saw the demon grab the bone spear and gestured. Yes. As soon as Breeze's voice fell, the mad demon's arm swelled up, and the magic stone inlaid on its arm emitted a faint yellow light. It then bent its body and took a step forward, throwing the bone spear at the target with all its might. A white shadow flashed by, and a crisp buzzing sound came from the distant armor. The mad demon's arm quickly withered, as if it had exhausted all its strength. Perhaps because of the great loss of vitality, the recovery time this time was much longer than usual. After about an hour, its arm gradually returned to normal. Of course, the throwing power was not weak at all. The bone spear completely penetrated the breastplate and was firmly stuck in the wall. When it was pulled out, it could be seen that the spearhead had been broken during the impact. If it had been replaced with a short iron spear, it would have been more powerful. However, judging from the mad demon's clothes, the enemy seemed to be worse at using iron than humans. Even the senior demon's armor did not seem to be made of pure metal. After thinking about it, it was probably because metal smelting required high-temperature flames, and the red mist happened to be unable to withstand high temperatures. If Agatha's information was accurate, the demons must have very harsh conditions for using fire. If human civilization originated from fire, then the demons were probably born to hate fire. The next test was a quick throwing. The mad demon was forced to throw 2 bone spears at the fastest time possible, and at the same time, it let out a painful roar. It seemed that even though its body was under control, it could not avoid the severe pain caused by overusing the magic stone. When the throwing was over, its whole arm went limp like a piece of dry bark, and it never recovered. This time, the 2 bone spears collided with the 3mm steel plate and shattered. Chapter 560. After coming to this conclusion, Roland was slightly relieved. As a low-level combatant, the demons did not have the combat effectiveness of conventional firearms. Within a distance of 500 to 1,000 meters, machine guns and cannons were enough to crush all standing enemies. Spears were obviously not suitable for trench warfare. It took 3 to 5 seconds for the magic stone to be charged to take effect. As long as the bullet production kept up, the mad demons would not even have the chance to throw short spears. This meant that at least on the battlefield where the 2 armies met, humans definitely had the power to fight. It would be great if you were born in Tequila. Agatha looked at the weapon in Roland's hand and sighed. There are 100 times more ordinary people on the fertile plains than in Grey Castle, and so are the witches. If everyone had a spear, maybe the demons would have already gone back to where they came from. Roland smiled, but in his heart, he did not think so. After all, the Empire was dominated by witches more than 400 years ago. If there really was a weapon that could make ordinary people more powerful than witches, would the higher-ups of the Union readily accept its existence? In any era, witches were the minority. From the land of dawn to the fertile plains, there were tens of millions of humans, but only thousands of witches. Would those ordinary people, who had been oppressed for a long time, be willing to step onto the battlefield? Once the power was reversed, the collapse of the ruling class would inevitably lead to civil strife. Even after the awakening of nationalism, the idea of fighting for the survival of human beings seemed extremely vague, let alone a group of people living in slavery who had such lofty ideals. Of course, he would not say these words in public. Since Agatha was only a researcher of the Quest Society, it was better not to let her get involved in politics. After the damage experiment, Anna once again cut off the demon's limbs and put it in an iron cage. Is it done? Agatha asked. Roland shook his head. Let's call it a day. We'll do the damage experiment tomorrow morning. What's that? To test the resistance of the demon to guns, as well as the effects of chemicals, pills of madness and dreamland water, Roland muttered. By the way, let Lucia try to separate the components of the red mist, and see what we can find. Unfortunately, he couldn't raise the devils for a long time. Otherwise, with Nana's healing ability, he would only need a small number of devil samples to obtain more comprehensive data. Agatha yawned. It's up to you, but I need 2 witches to help me make the sigil. In addition, the materials have to be prepared in advance. Once the devil dies, the blood won't last long, so it's best to start melting the god's stone of retaliation while it's still alive. She paused. By the way, have you thought about what kind of sigil you want to make? As long as you have enough magic stones, you can make any of them. Of course. She nodded. Failure will not consume the stone itself. At most it will make me. No, it's nothing. Roland raised an eyebrow. Let you what? Don't mind it. It was just a slip of the tongue. Agatha curled her lips. At most, you'll lose some ordinary materials. Seeing that the other party did not want to continue, he did not pursue the matter. Let me study the Encyclopedia of Magic Stones first. I will give you the answer tomorrow morning. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. Edith Kant stood by the window, overlooking the city at night. Merchants often said that candlelight meant wealth. The brighter a place was at night, the wealthier it was. She thought that she could only see such a brightly lit scene in the taverns or theaters in the inner city of King City. But here, she knew what it meant to stay up all night. The south bank of the Redwater River was exactly like that. Looking from afar, the shore seemed to be lit up, but it was not the orange light of a bonfire. Instead, it was a kind of soft yellow light, stable and bright, as if the sun was covered by a layer of fine gauze. Under such light, the entire factory area would continuously produce all kinds of goods at night. They called them industrial products. The steam engine was one of them. The visit in the afternoon gave Edith an indescribable shock. This kind of shock was far greater than the battle, or anything else. Even His Majesty's so-called abolition of the fief could not compare with it. When she walked into the factory and saw the coarse iron ingots being ground down by a rapidly rotating grinding wheel, and then a hole was spun by a drill, her eyes were immediately attracted. Especially at the end, when the iron blocks full of grease and debris were cleaned and turned into shiny parts, there was a kind of new beauty. In the roar of the machine, the hard materials were processed into different shapes, and then combined in a unique way to move on their own. What a wonderful power it was. The factory floor was flowing with sewage, metal debris was everywhere, and there was noise and humid air. It was not a wonderful place, but Edith stayed for the whole afternoon, and she clearly remembered that the official from City Hall, who led the delegation to visit, looked impatient and couldn't wait to leave this noisy place as soon as possible. It was not until they planned to go back to the mansion that the official was relieved. At the same time, she remembered a sentence that was still fresh in her mind. What was so interesting about this thing? Only His Majesty Roland would think that there was beauty hidden in these black lumps. Contain beauty? Edith instantly felt a strong sense of resonance. That's right. This was beauty, the beauty brought by the pure power, the beauty of being able to knead and transform metals at will. Especially after she understood the operating principle of the steam engine, there was an additional kind of beauty that borrowed from the general trend of nature. This kind of beauty was far from being comparable to colorful gems or exquisite and luxurious clothes. She only felt that something in her heart was faintly touched. How did His Majesty know this knowledge? Besides this, what else did he know? Suddenly, a knock on the bedroom door interrupted Edith's thoughts. Sister, I'm done. Cole poked his head in. The water is still hot. Do you want to continue? Ask the servants to boil a new basin, she ordered. Have you figured out the principle of drawing water here? I asked someone. The water in the pipe seems to flow out from those standing iron towers. Cole scratched his head and walked into the room. As for how the water flows up from the well, they can't tell. By the way, there's something in the bathroom that you must try. It looks like a special oil, but it gives off a fragrance when it's soaked in water. It's great for cleaning. I bet that even the milk rose bath isn't as comfortable as this. Is this also His Majesty's arrangement? Edith could not help but think. The residence of the delegation was located near the castle district. It was a 4-story house, and the top floor was even higher than the castle. Not only could they enjoy the night view of Neverwinter, but even the layout and facilities of the room were quite ingenious. Although it was not big, it was extremely comfortable. According to the official from City Hall, this was a hotel specially prepared by His Majesty for foreign ambassadors. It seemed to be called the Foreign Affairs Building. Chapter 561. What do you think? Edith went back to the bed and sat down. The bathroom? I mean the new law. Cole looked hesitant. I'll write to my father tomorrow and tell him about His Majesty's conditions, but I don't think he'll agree. Really? Edith could not deny it. Seeing that she did not deny it, Cole became a little more courageous. I've also read the booklet that His Majesty gave me. Let's not talk about whether the content in it is true or not. The most powerful noble used as an example is only the son of an earl. Now he is equivalent to a duke without a fief. To be honest, if I were only a knight, I would definitely make the same choice. But my father is the rightful ruler of the northern region, and the Duke of the city of Evernight. His status and power are far lower than the eldest son of the Honeysuckle family. Once he agrees to His Majesty's terms, it means that he gives up his territory. It's not an upgrade, but a real decline. You're right. Edith nodded with a smile. Before her brother could cheer up, she continued, but you've overlooked one thing. What? That we can occupy these positions and powers. Cole's expression froze. You've obviously focused on the stories at the back of the pamphlet, but I'm more concerned about the opening paragraph. Edith picked up the pamphlet and opened the cover. If this is His Majesty's idea, I have to say it's very interesting. The cause of feudalism. Cole poked his head out. Do you understand what it means? It's just a coined word. You can think of it as our current system, or you can call it nobility. Cole looked puzzled. Edith shook her head to herself. The content seemed rather awkward at first, and it seemed inexplicable to be used as the opening paragraph in the brochure. It was far less vivid than the following examples. However, if one could understand its true meaning, they would find that it was the basis for Roland Wimbledon's decision to implement the new law. It was the first time that she had seen such a novel and thorough statement. Have you ever thought about why we enfeoff the land to our knight and retainers? That way they'll be loyal to the Counts, Cole muttered. And they'll be able to recruit more brave men to serve them. What if father took the whole of the north? Edith asked. Are you saying that all of it belongs to the family? The younger brother thought for a while and shook his head. Of course not. If we occupy all the territories, the knight will leave the northern region. Without their property, they will definitely look for opportunities in other places. The same goes for the lesser nobles. In that case, the Count family will be the only noble family in several towns. Is it not good? Of course. Cole blinked, as if he did not understand why his sister would ask such a simple question. The northern region is too vast for us to manage. If Cliffside City is attacked, it will take the guards half a week to get there from the city of Evernight, not including the time it takes to deliver the message. Besides, collecting taxes and grain is also very troublesome. We can't expect those untouchables to voluntarily hand over these things, right? So in order to keep our land, we keep expanding the number of vassals. In the final analysis, it's because of the need of war and the limited management ability. This is also the main reason why His Majesty thinks the feudal system is formed. Edith stroked the pages of the book. But now the situation has changed. No matter how much we expand the number of troops, we can't stop His Majesty's thunder. His army is invincible in the whole kingdom. At the same time, His Majesty firmly believes that a strong city hall can manage the affairs of the whole territory well. Naturally, there is no need to enfeoff the land to the nobles. Well, Cole opened his mouth but did not know how to answer. Roland Wimbledon thinks this is an inevitability of history. She pointed to the last sentence of the opening. A fully functional centralized government will inevitably replace the enfeoffed nobles, because a unified management plan can make better use of the resources of the whole territory, tap the potential of the people, and make the whole kingdom burst out with strong productivity. And productivity is the decisive factor that determines which power can survive. Nonsense, Cole said in a low voice. What's productivity? Can it be compared to who can farm better? 10 farmers can't beat one knight. And to manage the whole country. Where does he find so many people to take charge of the tax? Won't he entrust it to the nobles? If those people can really collect money and grain, what's the difference between using it now and using it now? The untouchables don't care who is their king. I'm as curious as you are about this. Edith raised the corner of her mouth. But the person who wrote this can't be unprepared to implement this new set of laws. What do you think? She paused. Let's go visit him again tomorrow. This time I'll do it. So soon. Cole was surprised. Don't you usually wait until the other party mentions your identity before revealing it? I can't wait until then. Edith shrugged. And don't write to father yet. Before we left, you heard him say that I'm in charge of this trip. Do you want to promise His Majesty? He gasped. Father will kill you. No, I mean he'll hate you. Cole corrected himself. After all, the main reason he wants you to go is to protect his dukedom. Don't worry, I'm not that easy to convince. Edith raised her eyebrows. Since he's already given me the conditions, he should at least let me bargain, right? The next day, the injury test reports were sent to Roland's desk one after another. The demons' bodies were not much stronger than those of witches. Whether it was guns or swords, they could be fatally wounded. However, probably due to the difference in their physiological structure, poisons had little effect on them. For example, chlorine gas, nitric oxide, and carbon monoxide did not affect the mad demon. Even if they did, it was because the effective components of the red mist had been weakened. The same was true for Dreamland Water and Pill of Madness. The former could not make them fall asleep, and the latter could not make them go berserk. After the red mist was decomposed, it turned into several kinds of gas and water. After Kyle Sichi's examination, he confirmed that part of it was flammable and emitted a foul smell. Another part was nitrogen, and the rest was unknown. However, these were not necessities for the demons to survive. The main reason was the subtle magic power surging in the mist, which was why the red mist could not be preserved for a long time. In addition, when the temperature rose to 300 degrees, the red mist would decompose faster, and when it approached 800 degrees, it would even burn. Chapter 562. While Roland was thinking about what kind of arson tool would be easier to make, a guard came in and said, "Your Majesty, the emissary from the northern region wants to see you." It's only been one day. Roland was a little surprised. Are they going to refuse my request directly instead of waiting for the Duke's reply? Take them to the reception hall, Roland ordered after a moment of silence. Also, tell Carter to block the Foreign Affairs building and temporarily prohibit the emissary delegation from going out. Yes, Your Majesty. Since the emissary could not agree with his policy, Roland had to force them to stay. When Roland walked into the reception hall on the first floor, he found that the people on the other side of the long table had changed their seats. The woman, who was supposed to be Cole's assistant, was sitting in the main seat, while Cole was sitting in the second seat with a book in his hands. Your Majesty, I'm Edith Kant, the eldest daughter of the Duke of Evernight and Cole's sister. The woman stood up and made a standard noble bow. This is not the first time we've met. Cole forgot to introduce me last time. Please forgive me. Carwen's daughter. Roland was surprised at first, and then he could not help but be interested. So you're the leader of the emissary delegation? Yes. She put her hand on her chest and said, My father has entrusted me with this mission and given me the Duke's seal. It wasn't that there weren't any women participating in politics in this era, but it was extremely rare, not to mention a young and beautiful woman. Roland could tell from Edith's expression that this was not the first time she had dealt with a superior. Her words and behavior were impeccable. As for the concealment of her identity, Roland realized that it was a trick to attract the attention of the negotiators. She was not deliberately concealing her identity. She was just using the disguise of a woman to mislead the negotiators. It was not deception, and most nobles would only regard it as an act of fun. Roland had to admit that it was indeed effective. In other words, you can make decisions on behalf of your father? Yes, Your Majesty. To be precise, he will listen to my opinion. What a confident answer. Roland looked at Cole, who was scratching his ears and cheeks, and could not help but laugh. Well, Miss Edith, what's your purpose of seeing me? Roland had thought that she would tactfully say that she couldn't accept such a condition, or use other more interesting methods to get him to take back the new law. He didn't expect that she would take out a book from her backpack and put it on the table. It was the brochure he had written. I have some questions to ask you, Edith said bluntly. You said that the reason why the feudal nobles will be eliminated sooner or later is that the central power continues to expand. But without the help of the nobles, how can you ensure that you can effectively manage the vast kingdom? Does he want to discuss politics with me? Looking at her sincere eyes, Roland realized that she was serious. It had been a long time since he had heard such an interesting question. It's the people and the progress of technology, he answered after thinking for a while. Are you referring to those free citizens? What is technological advancement? That's right. A management team trained by City Hall, paid by City Hall, and provided with manpower and supporting facilities by City Hall doesn't require the manager to have strong assets or abundant manpower. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether the manager is a noble or not. Roland began to explain the form of a centralized government and the way for ordinary people to be promoted. Then he talked about the practical significance of technology in controlling the territory. He talked for an hour. How do you plan to prevent the administrative officials far away from the king's city from malfeasance? After Grey Castle is unified, how will the trade be distributed? Can productivity really be used as a standard to measure policy? The more she asked, the more Edith's eyes sparkled. It was not until noon that she let out a long sigh. I see. You really didn't write that opening speech casually. Roland also sipped his tea contentedly. As a person with a different profession, his political knowledge was probably only up to this point. Thank you for your answers. I didn't expect you to tell me these things in such detail. The most basic requirement of a city hall in the new era is to publicize the policy. We must let everyone clearly understand the content of the new policy, so that the implementation will not be strange. Edith nodded and changed the topic. Can you provide the production equipment and personnel for the steam engine to the northern region? I can't at the moment because Neverwinter is also short of people. But you can send some people to learn, provided that the nobles in the northern region give up their feudal rights and obey the management of City Hall. The construction technology of paddle steamers can also be taught? Of course, as long as we pay the Golden Dragon, it won't be a problem. But without the witch's help, it'll be difficult for you to move the entire production line to the northern region in a short time. Your calmness surprises me, Your Majesty. She pondered for a moment. But there's one thing I don't understand. According to your plan, you can easily annex the entire Grey Castle in 10 years. At that time, you can push the new policy without any resistance, and you don't need to care about our opinions. Why are you so eager? Roland fell silent. After a while he said, Do you really want to know the answer? Edith probably did not expect him to answer so seriously, so she also became solemn. Yes. Then come with me. He stood up and said, I'll show you something. Stepping into the shady backyard, Roland led Edith to the wooden shed in the center of the olive grove. The demon, whose limbs had been amputated, was lying flat on a long table, surrounded by various bottles and jars. Agatha was making the final preparations for blood extraction. God above, this is what? Edith let out a low cry of disbelief, but Roland noticed that there was only shock on her face, not fear. I should lock the shed and ask Leaf to surround the yard. Agatha frowned. Don't tell me you're going to let a common person participate in the sigil production. If I was fusing the Godstone, I'd probably have failed. Of course not. It'll be ready soon. Roland coughed twice and turned to Edith. The alien creature in front of you is the legendary demon. They appear in the northern region of the impassable mountain range, and are the biggest enemy that human beings will soon face. The war between the two races has nothing to do with territory or wealth. It's to decide who can survive, and the loser will perish completely. Demon? Decide to continue the war? Edith could not help but murmur. Chapter 563. After Roland and the mortal woman left, Agatha heaved a sigh of relief. Did I say too much just now? Maybe I should be more kind to this lord after 400 years, even if he is immortal. Although she thought so, she still did not like people other than witches to step into the laboratory where she was about to start making sigil, and she did not want His Majesty to know how to make sigil. Of course, she would not be able to keep this a secret for long. Agatha turned around, laid out the 6 square wooden boxes that she had prepared in the morning, and put the Godstones of retaliation collected by His Majesty into them. This was the template for making the base of the sigil. She needed to make 4 sigil of listening, 1 sigil of screaming, and 1 sigil of insight. Just as she expected, His Majesty did not choose a sigil for a weapon. Instead, he chose a basic sigil based on the magic stones he had obtained. In the Quest Society, it would have been a waste to use the high-quality magic stones left by the Magic Slayer for the sigil of Shriek and the sigil of Insight. Now that Roland had powerful firearms, he naturally did not need a sigil of weapons as much as before. Not to mention that the more powerful the sigil, the higher the demand for magic power. At this moment, there was another knock on the door. It seems that I need a few servants in addition to a research tower. Agatha reluctantly put down the magic stones in her hand and opened the wooden door. What's wrong, Your Majesty? Is there anything else? Sorry to keep you waiting, Miss Agatha. Well, do you need me to treat the demon again? This time it was Anna and Nana who came in. They were also the assistants she had requested from Roland. No. Ahem, she corrected herself. You came just in time. I've just finished the screening. Put the remaining materials into the box, and then we can officially start making. When the blue blood flowed into the wooden box through the coated tube, the Godstone underwent a wonderful change. The two blended together and produced a series of bubbles. The hard stone was like a burning candle, and the water chestnut turned into a viscous liquid that flowed down, followed by the Godstone itself. The demon seemed to realize what they were doing and used the last of its strength to struggle. Unfortunately, it was useless under the iron chains. Soon, the 6 boxes were filled with the blood of the mad demon. The first box that was filled with the blood seemed to be boiling. The surging liquid mixed fine sand, mercury, and Godstones together, looking thick and turbid. Anna carefully observed their changes. Does the quality of the sigil have anything to do with the raw materials? Yes, it mainly depends on the Godstone of retaliation and the magic blood. The Quest Society believes that magic transforms the body in all aspects. The physical fitness of senior witches is obviously better than that of ordinary witches, and the Transcendents have reached the limit in this regard. In order to improve the effect of the sigil, the best sigil would be made from the blood of powerful demons and the best Godstones. For example, Lady Alice's God's Punishment sigil was made from the blood of a dying magic slayer on the battlefield. Is it the same when a witch's blood fuses with a Godstone? It's not the same. Magic stones won't melt like candles, and the reaction won't be as intense. The liquid that forms is as clear as water and can flow freely. But the demon's blood will eventually solidify and become as hard as a stone. As Agatha spoke, she put a partition panel into the wooden box. Therefore, the process of making a sigil is similar to smelting metal. Before it completely solidifies, the magic stone must be put in, and the most important step must be completed. Connecting the magic vein. Vein? Anna asked curiously. Like a plant? Agatha nodded. Do you remember what I said before? The Quest Society believes that only life can carry magic power. Without this step, the sigil is just a dead thing. The magic stone is still an individual, and it won't combine to produce incredible power. Can the demon's blood give these ordinary substances life? She asked in surprise. It's not enough to rely on the demons alone, Agatha said calmly. You have to add the witch's blood. Nana covered her mouth in shock. The Quest Society discovered this secret by accident. When the blood of witches and demons is mixed, it can produce a strange effect. The melted god's stone remains in a fresh state, just like a plant. Even if it is left for a long time, the vein will not lose the blessing of magic power. I don't know how to describe it. In short, you'll understand after you watch. The liquid in the first box had calmed down and was covered with a layer of gray light. It looked like blue wax after it had condensed. Agatha took out the panel, leaving 2 hemispherical grooves and a shallow strip-shaped groove in the box. Then she picked up a knife on the table and cut her wrist. Bright red blood instantly gushed out and filled half of the wine glass. She gestured to the little girl and said, "Help me heal the wound." This was the reason why Agatha chose these two. Anna was the witch with the best learning ability in the Union, and was suitable to inherit this skill. On the other hand, Nana could effectively relieve her pain. In Tequila, healing witches were the main force in the front line and could not be assigned to the Quest Society. Most of the time, after bleeding in the laboratory, they could only use herbs to treat their wounds. If Roland Wimbledon had not shown her the hope of defeating the demons and had no prejudice against witches, she would have rather buried the method of making sigil. Even in the Union, most people could not accept the fact that the blood of witches could be perfectly mixed with the demons. Even after she came into contact with this matter, she once had doubts about the origin of witches. This confusion was very disadvantageous to the battle of divine will, so the making of sigil was one of the secrets that the members of the Quest Society had to keep. This was also the reason why she did not want His Majesty to participate in the battle of divine will. Especially in this era, there were still rumors that witches were the minions of the demons who had seduced the demons. Even if he would find out sooner or later, Agatha still hoped that it would be a little later. She sighed to herself and thought, maybe this is also a kind of self-deception. When the mixture was half hard, Agatha forcefully inserted the magic stone into the groove and poured the warm blood into it. The red blood flowed in the shallow groove, and the surrounding blue blood clots began to squirm. The edges of the two gradually blurred, forming a state of mutual penetration. Then she infused magic into the sigil. In an instant, the red bloodlines emitted a subtle light. Countless light spots flowed on the veins, and with the surrounding squirming, they expanded and shrank rhythmically, as if they were breathing. Anna and Nana simultaneously understood what Agatha meant. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.